Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, folks, give us a phone call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Would love to take your calls. We got a great show lined up for you today. Really excited for our first interview. We're going to do things a little bit out of our typical run of show. But really excited for this interview. We're going to be talking to Eddie Burkhalter and Matthew Vernon Whalan about the state of prisons in Alabama. It's going to be a really good conversation. Hopefully, you will learn a lot. There's a lot to learn about the state of Alabama's prisons, and almost none of it good. And you know, it's something that's so easy for us to just, you know, literally out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean, we don't. A lot of times they're in really rural areas, and you just literally do not see the conditions that the state of Alabama cages human beings in. And, you know, that's something that I think is important, and I think that we need to reckon with, particularly, you know, because of the fact that by and large, the people that end up in these prisons are not the rich. They're not the owners of businesses. They're, you know, they are people who a lot of times caught a bad break, went the wrong direction, and grew up in working class families. And so, you know, these are the people that end up in the prisons. And so it's, you know, I think it's a relevant thing for a union radio program to talk about. We have on the line Eddie Burkhalter, researcher for the Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, and Matthew Vernon Whalan, journalist and author of the new book, Bullock, Chronicles of Deprivation and Despair in an American Prison. Eddie, Matthew, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it. Eddie, you've been on the program before, and just as a point of personal privilege, I figured I would ask you, are you related to former Alabama AFL-CIO President Stuart Burkhalter?
I am not. I can't claim that part of my family. No, sorry.
Okay. I was just wondering. I had thought about it the other day, and I was like, oh, well, next time I see him, I'm going to have to ask him about that. So, okay, not related, but appreciate your time and coming on the show. You know, Matthew, you live in Vermont, actually, in New England, and so I'm curious, what made you interested in Alabama prisons specifically? What made you want to write about our prison system?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's sort of a long story, I guess. I sort of stumbled into this work. But when I was younger, and I guess my teenage years, I became interested in a death penalty case in Alabama of a guy named Jimmy Davis Jr. I had a family member who worked pro bono on the case, and I had read through his case file and written about it. And I continued to write about Alabama prisons and made connections to other inmates. In about 2019, in early 2019, I had started work on an oral history project about prisons in Alabama, with prisoners, their families, and others, just about how mass incarceration affects people in Alabama. And that was when the pandemic broke out. And so the stories sort of felt a lot more urgent. So instead of doing oral histories on that topic, I sort of switched to just writing investigative news articles about what was unfolding in the prisons during the pandemic. And I just have stayed in touch with people and continued reporting on them over the years. So I've reported on well over half, I think, of the Alabama men's prisons.
Can you give us an overview of, what is the, if somebody were to take away one thing from this interview about what it is like living in a prison in Alabama, what would you want people to take away about the conditions in the prisons?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest, and Eddie can, point out if there are others as well, but I think the biggest, most central problem with the conditions of the prisons, which a lot of the other problems sort of revolve around and stem from, is overcrowding. So they're open bay dormitories for the most part. They're extremely overcrowded. The buildings are incredibly dilapidated, even though a fair number of them are not particularly old. So a common assumption, even among prisoners I interview, is like these buildings are just so old. They need new ones. They need to be shut down. But actually, like Bullock was only built in 1987. St. Clair was only built in 1983. Bibb was built in 1998. So I have sources who have been in prison for longer than many of these buildings have existed, which is a big part of where the overcrowding comes from, is the sentencing laws. The overcrowding is probably the most persistent theme, which a lot of others like violence stem from. And also the deprivation is the other word there in the title of the book. So it's overcrowded and resources are scarce. So, for example, prisoners get one roll of toilet paper a week. If they run out, they don't get another one. It's actually considered destruction of state property to like cut up your shirt or use your sheets or anything else. So prisoners are flushing all kinds of things down the toilet because they run out of toilet paper, and then the plumbing systems are quickly over capacity and dysfunctional. I guess I would say overcrowding is probably the most persistent theme. And
when I read that in your book, that they have a ration of toilet paper of one roll per week, that was almost difficult to believe. I'm assuming that I can be correct in assuming that these are not the really nice, like Charmin Ultra Strong, really big rolls of toilet paper. They're presumably like the really thin one ply that you have to use just a whole lot to be able to do anything with. Do you have any idea about like specifically what kind of toilet paper they have?
That's a great question. I assume it's some sort of unpleasant industrial, very harsh, unpleasant toilet paper, but I've not actually had it in my hand or used it, thankfully.
Right.
Yeah.
Eddie, Matthew was talking about the overcrowding and how, and specifically the toilet paper, and how that has led to sewage problems. Can you talk to us about what do those sewage problems look like in the prisons, and how prevalent are they?
Yeah, Matthew's book does a really good job of describing, the serious nature of this issue. I mean, it's one thing to hear that, toilets get backed up, but to live in that environment where the showers and the toilets are backing up with excrement, and that's how you have to exist. I mean, the illnesses that can result from that. I mean, we're building a database of deaths at Appleseed, and in 2023, our first year that we're building this database, we see a lot of natural deaths of things that really should be preventable. Sepsis, different kinds of infections. It's hard to imagine that living in that environment is healthy for somebody.
And one of the things that really stuck out to me when I was reading the book was like every time it rains, the toilets get backed up to such an extent that they get like that the sewage comes out of the bathrooms and into like the dorm rooms and even some of the common areas. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that's right. And Bullock is not the only one. I've actually reported on Fountain Prison and actually, in one of those articles, I was able to get pretty extensive video documentation from inside the prison of sewage water just streaming into one of the dorms in Bullock on Christmas, the week of Christmas. The plumbing system was extremely backed up. Prisoners were telling each other not to use the bathroom. And, I don't want to do any spoiler alert, but basically, two of the prisoners ended up like snaking garbage bags down their arm and reaching into the toilets and trying to unclog the system with their hands, essentially, to relieve some of the pressure on the system. And they were engaged in that for hours and hours. Also, I should say the heating system also broke down in Bullock. And at the beginning of the winter, it's a standard practice for, at least in Bullock, for everyone to get an extra blanket. But pretty quickly, and from the interviews, it sounds like this is not the first time this has happened. They had to use their blankets to mop up the sewage water from the floors because they were not being provided any cleaning supplies by the prison administration.
The lots of other problems, health problems in the prison, particularly overdose deaths, violence, people being killed in the prisons. And, Alabama prisons have been like it's kind of the conditions in the prisons have always been bad, but there have been ebbs and flows in the public consciousness about how bad this is. And in your book, you talk about in the 70s and 80s how, there was some interest in trying to make it a little bit less like a third world, prison camp. And it's going to be a little bit long, but I want to read a quote from your book in which you quote from somebody else's book and then juxtapose that to a recent report. It's a little bit long, so folks bear with me, but it's so important, I think, in contextualizing really how bad our prison system is. So you quote this fellow named Yackel, who wrote a book about the prison system in Alabama in the 80s. So at one point in Reform and Regret, that's the name of the book, Yackel notes that a particularly bad stretch in the early 1970s, this is what you're about to hear, is like, oh, they were thinking this is really, really bad, brought more attention to the problems with Alabama prisons and added urgency to the legal challenges getting underway at the time. Here's from Reform and Regret. The attention of prison authorities was diverted to even more serious difficulties within the system. The prison population had been growing for years, but now the influx of new inmates was staggering. Frustration and anger grew in geometric proportion. The result in Alabama was what it had been in Attica in New York only 2 years earlier. Through the long summer and fall of 1973, local newspapers carried scattered stories of inmate violence. Reports that inmates had been stabbed, raped, or murdered became common. By official count, a total of 27 prisoners, 27, keep that number in your head, 27 prisoners lost their lives in the Alabama penal system in the 1972 to 1973 period. Guards were also occasionally injured or killed. The rate of incidents promised to be higher still if the legislature enacted pending bills sponsored by Attorney General Baxley to increase prison sentences and thus the number of inmates dramatically. So Whalan continues and says, to compare what were considered to be particularly scandalous numbers in the early 1970s to what we are seeing now, take this report from December of 2022, 50 years after the period that Yackel was writing about. Here's from that December 2022 report. More people incarcerated in Alabama's prisons have died so far in 2022 than in any single year for decades. In the first 11 months of the year, 11 months, 222 people died in the state's prisons. The Alabama Department of Corrections had not reported the total number of deaths in 2022. Press have confirmed 222 deaths, which exceeds the toll recorded during the height of the COVID pandemic. And so now we're breaking away from that report, and he says, consider this breakdown of even more recent numbers by Burkhalter, who's on the air with us right now. Alabama prisons saw a record 325 deaths in 2023. I mean, that's staggering. That is, I almost, I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know, Matthew or Eddie, if you have anything to say about the deaths particularly, but, I'm interested in talking a little bit about the drugs if you don't have any other comments on just the numbers.
Yeah, I can speak briefly on the numbers. I mean, that year, so we've actually learned that there are a few more through records requests. That year was actually 328. It's the latest number we have. Just to give you a sort of an idea of where that sits nationally, the overdose death rate that year was 20 times the national rate across state prisons. There were 100 overdose deaths that year alone, and of those, 58 included fentanyl, either by itself or in combination with another drug. So fentanyl itself is killing folks just about every day in an Alabama prison. So far this year, there have been 100 deaths just between January 1st and the end of June. So, 6 months in, we're at 100. 2023 was a record year of deaths. 2024, we don't have a full picture yet on what caused those deaths, but it was at 277, and so it hasn't gotten much better. We're seeing homicide rates 4.25 times the national rate in 2023, 14 homicides that year. Suicides are very high as well. It's a crisis. I mean, it's a real crisis.
And then also a fair number that the investigations have not been closed. Is that right? Yeah.
And so, Eddie, can you talk to us about the drugs? Because you said, a lot of these are coming from overdose deaths, and that might sound kind of bizarre to people who are in the free world, as the prisoners in Alabama call it, because you would think, well, they're in prison. How are they getting drugs, Eddie?
Yeah, Matthew's book does a really good job of talking about this. The folks, his sources are hearing what exactly we know to be the case is that most of the drugs that get into our prisons they're walking through the fences, with staff, officers and staff. You can get just about anything in prisons, and we've seen arrests. There have been efforts by ADOC to sort of crack down on this, but really it's just the tip of the iceberg. The amount of drugs in our prisons is astonishing, and that's evident by the number of overdose deaths. I mean, we see, and this is just the deaths. These aren't folks who overdose and don't die. That number must be much larger. We just don't see that recorded in the data as much. It's a big business. You can make a lot of money selling drugs in prisons. We've heard from one officer who told one of my colleagues that they put their kid through college selling drugs. So, it's a big business.
Yeah, I would also add, I was pretty surprised at how open with me the prisoners in Bullock were about how the drugs were getting in. In the past, when I've asked people that question, they're pretty afraid to answer it, understandably. But every single source I asked in Bullock said it was coming in through the guards. And also, I just want to note that in, I think it was 2022, Alabama Appleseed did the bitter pill report, which showed that that overdose deaths continued even after the prisons were closed for visitation. So there's really only one way they could have been getting in. There's nobody else. You had a full time period where nobody else was going in and out of the prison except the staff.
Yeah, I mean, that it's and one of the things that you do in your book, Matthew, is you talk about how there are a lot of people in the prison system who did not enter addicted to drugs. They came in for some other thing, and through the terrible conditions in the prisons, and basically the fact that that's like that doing drugs is like one of the only ways that you can kind of find some level of mental relief, that a lot of people get addicted to it in the prisons. They're coming out of these prisons with more problems than they went in with.
Yeah, and that's sort of regardless of what problems they went in with. I think I say in there that, just kind of as a side note, it was interesting to interview. It's been interesting over the years to interview so many prisoners who are in there for violent crimes and hadn't done drugs before and then started doing drugs in prison, and also to have interviewed so many people who were in there for nonviolent crimes and then committed a violent act after they got to prison. Um, there's sort of examples of the system's failure at every level for every kind of prisoner.
Speaking of that, the different kinds of prisoners, Eddie, do you have like a profile of the typical person in an Alabama prison, like why they got in for, like what their economic background might be? Do you have anything like that offhand?
Yeah, this is important. I'm glad you asked that, because there is this notion, and it's been said by folks in leadership in Alabama, that our prisons are full of dangerous, violent people. Let's just clarify real quick. ADOC's own quarterly report, their last monthly report, puts that number of violent offenders in our prisons at 65%, and that's a legal definition. That doesn't mean they hurt anybody. That just means that they're classified as violent. You could go into somebody's garage, steal their lawnmower, they're not home, and that's considered a violent offense. So we have a lot of folks serving in our prisons for very low level, minor property crimes, drug crimes. Some of those don't even make it out. They could die. We did stories. They're horrible. Guys serving 1 to 2 years for minor things and get killed before they get released. So yeah, the notion that our prisons are full of violent people is incorrect. I will say that nobody comes out of our prisons better. They're racked with PTSD. They've probably been assaulted once or twice or more. Yeah, I mean, we're not rehabilitating people. It's a horrible situation.
And I want to, that's always been a very frustrating thing to me. That the people who support this sort of punitive correctional system do not have to own any of the violent crime that comes out of that, right? I mean, every time somebody commits a murder because they were out on the street or whatever, and if they had been previously arrested, the thing is, oh, well, they were let out and they should have never been let out. And it's like, even for violent crimes, nobody basically says that even if you actually do hurt somebody, and even if you hurt somebody badly, nobody thinks that you should be in prison for the rest of your life for most violent felonies. Like, that's just not how it works. And so they have to come out. And the fact is that these prisons are making people come out worse. Why don't folks like Governor Kay Ivey have to answer for the violent crimes that are committed by the people that come out of her prisons?
Yeah, I mean, 95% of the people in our prison serving today will get out. Only 5% are serving life without sentences. Yeah, where's the concern about safety in our communities? Because these folks that are getting out aren't receiving the kind of programs and care they need while they're in, and so we're doing them a disjustice. We're doing their communities a disjustice. This isn't safety. I mean, if you care about safety, you rehabilitate. You make these programs available, these drug programs that folks are waiting year to get in our prisons. I mean, that's, if you care about safety, put your money where your mouth is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
also,
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. No, I was just say quickly that also, as a result of the overcrowding, there's no classification system. So you have violent prisoners and nonviolent prisoners all mixed up together. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about how folks who are assaulted by somebody, even sexually or otherwise, might go to the correctional officers and try to be separated from this person who assaulted them. And in some cases, like, they're just totally ignored and they're continued to allow to be in the same dorm with this person that assaulted them. And yeah, it's it's staggering. I really recommend folks check it out. Bullock, Chronicles of Deprivation and Despair. We're talking to the author Matthew Vernon Whalan and Eddie Burkhalter, researcher for the Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. We're coming up on the end of the segment, but I've got a couple of more questions. I had more that I wanted to ask, but we ran out of time. When I read stuff like this, and I hope, and I really do think that most people, if they were aware of what's going on in these cages for people, would be shocked and appalled. And so when asked, I'll start with you, Matthew, how do decision makers in the ADOC, the Department of Corrections, or relevant committees in the legislature or the governor's office respond to these reports?
Well, they used to respond to my request for comment a lot more, and they have not responded to my request for comment on this book, which I don't think is personal or anything. I assume they're just busy. But actually, when I was first in touch with the ADOC, and I think I've mentioned this to Eddie in the past, I was pretty shocked by how much they confirmed. I would have some horrible allegation, and I would ask them for a request for comment, oftentimes feeling pretty sure that they would say nothing or deny it. And they were often pretty straight up with me. And, I think that's because they support these things. So often when I was in touch with them, they were often pretty straight up with me. I mean, often they were pretty secretive about things that I thought were pretty obvious, but they have not responded to my request for comment on this book. And when they do comment publicly, they want to build more prisons, even though that solution has not worked in the past and has been court ordered against in the past. And even though they're trying to close 4 other prisons at the same time, so they say. So therefore, the reduction of overcrowding would be limited anyway. But even if they weren't doing that, history shows it wouldn't work. And so, I mean, I think the quote from Governor Ivey is responding to a DOJ report. She said, "We'll find an Alabama solution to this Alabama problem." I mean, I think we all know what that means. If history is any guide, the Alabama solution is to keep locking more people up and building more prisons and packing as many people into them as possible, as fast as possible, for as long as possible.
Eddie, is that the only thing that's being done right now to address any of these issues, is just trying to build more prisons?
That's the major push. We've seen some action from the Joint Legislative Prison Oversight Committee to do some things, and they've made some improvements. They're listening. Even the Republicans even on that committee are listening. They have been, but we'd like to see more substantive steps taken. Oversight. We need an oversight program to sort of oversee what's happening in our prisons, independent of ADOC, and that's something we're probably going to be calling for again. There just needs to be more. There's a new family services unit that was put into place to sort of address families' concerns as crises pop up, but we need more on the front end. There doesn't need to be a crisis in the first place. So
we've been talking to Eddie Burkhalter, researcher for the Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, and Matthew Vernon Whalan, journalist and author of the new book, Bullock, Chronicles of Deprivation and Despair in an American Prison. Matthew, where can folks find the book?
You can find the book on leftwingbooks.net, or it's also on Amazon now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you both for your time.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. We're going to be taking a break here momentarily. We'll be right back with Last Week in Southern Labor. We're also going to be talking to the president of the American Federation of Musicians Local 80 in Chattanooga. Looking forward to that conversation. Lots of show left to go. Stay tuned, folks. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama, this is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller. Today on the program, we just finished an interview with researchers and authors about the state of Alabama's prisons. If you want to check that out, you can find the stream on YouTube and Facebook. We'll also upload the interview as a clip later this week. We're about to get to last week in Southern labor, and we're going to be talking to Chattanooga Federation of Musicians President Nathan Really excited for that conversation. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show, we've got a phone number. The line is open. You can call us at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a voicemail throughout the week at any time when we might respond to it on the next program. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, TVLR.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining member of the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/the Valley Labor Report. We got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then get your union to sponsor the show so that we can stay on the air.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Let's jump right into last week in Southern labor. Here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from September 5th to the 12th in new union campaigns. 14 workers at Specs and Spirits and Finer Food in Temple, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters. 33 workers at Pre-Stressed Casting Company in Springfield, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 245. 650 workers at St. Joseph Health in Bryan, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with National Nurses United in NU. 3 workers at MCOR Government Services in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 99. 26 workers at Starbucks in West Palm Beach, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United, as did 21 more at a location in Bowling Green, Kentucky. 2 workers at Momentive Performance Materials in Friendly, West Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Chemical Workers Union Council, ICWUC, UFCW, Local 698C. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 455, as the union representing 550 workers at Wayne Sanderson Farms in Hammond, Louisiana. 21 workers at the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 1200. 47 workers at Dollar and Thrifty in Orlando, Florida, filed a petition to decertify the United Service Workers Union, USWU, Local 74. The Security, Police, and Fire Professionals of America, SPFPA, is attempting to raid a unit of 21 guards at Metro Special Police Department in Washington, D.C., who are currently represented by the National Capital Union for Security Officers. In election results, 13 workers at Custom Fabrication in Philpott, Kentucky, voted 3-10 against unionization with the Central Midwest Regional Council of Carpenters. 31 workers at GM Culinary in Austin, Texas, voted 21-10 in favor of unionization with Unite Here, Local 23. 14 workers at Starbucks in Nashville, Tennessee, withdrew their petition for a union election with Starbucks Workers United. 41 workers at GFL Plant Services in Houston, Texas, voted 22-19 in favor of unionization with the IBEW Local 988. 8 workers at Velocity Electric and Automation in Grain Valley, Missouri, voted 4-3 in favor of unionization with IBEW Local 124. 18 workers at Puerto Rico Energy in San Juan, Puerto Rico, voted to maintain their unionization with the Congress of Industrial Unions of Puerto Rico in a decertification election. 9 votes for the Congress of Industrial Unions to 2 for the Teamsters and 2-4 for no union. 4 workers at UFCW Local 540 in Dallas, Texas, withdrew their petition for a union election with the Federation of Agents and International Representatives, FAIR, and the International Guards Union of America withdrew their attempt to raid a unit of 21 security guards at Paragon Systems in Washington, D.C., who are currently represented by the United Government Security Officers of America. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, the recent immigration raids at the Hyundai facility in Georgia have brought attention to their poor employment practices generally, and how 3 workers have died just in the build-out of the factory already. The UAW and the Korean Metalworkers Union, which represents Hyundai workers in South Korea, released a joint statement saying, in part, "Capital crosses borders to exploit labor. The state, having abandoned its obligation to protect human rights, seems now obsessed with hunting down workers. At this moment, international solidarity among labor unions is more urgent than ever. KMWU and the UAW will take the lead and respond together to defend the rights of workers around the world." In strikes and bargaining updates, GM is laying off 700 workers at its Spring Hill, Tennessee plant, which is unionized with UAW Local 1853. The local union president told the media that these layoffs are temporary, though, as they retool the plant for different vehicles, and that thanks to their union contract, they'll still be getting paid a good portion of their salary while they're laid off. Machinists union members at Boeing in St. Louis, Missouri, voted to reject a tentative agreement with the company, continuing the strike. Members say that the deal didn't include enough. 3,200 workers are on strike, and Boeing says they're going to start hiring permanent replacements, but striking workers are not worried about that because they say no one is inside the plant to train the scabs. Republican Missouri Senator Josh Hawley sided with the striking workers, saying management needs to, quote, "suck it up" and give the workers what they're asking for. Workers at Invest in Louisiana, unionized with the News Guild CWA, ratified a new union contract that includes raises, 12 weeks of paid parental leave, and more. Workers at Greyhound Nationwide, unionized with the International Association of Machinists, IAM, ratified a new union contract that includes raises and more paid time off, among other things, according to the union. The UAW reached a tentative agreement with GE to potentially end the strike in Ohio and Kentucky. Workers there will be voting on the tentative agreement on September 19th. In political and legislative updates, a Tennessee think tank released a report showing that costs are still rising faster than wages for most Tennesseans, that tax incentives are hurting municipal budgets, and that housing costs are skyrocketing. More news on living conditions in the South. Oxfam released a report on the best and worst states to be a worker based on wage, worker protection, and the right to organize policies. It will come as no surprise that Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee ranked among the worst in the country. A Florida city council person filed a disclosure indicating that he has been union busting on the side. Florida reporter McKenna Schuler pointed out multiple inconsistencies in his filings and the fact that he filed months late, a violation of the law. The TVA is proposing new gas turbines in South Memphis, Tennessee. Union members spoke in support of the proposal at a recent public comment section, and environmental activists spoke out against the project. Some unions have responded to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Liz Schuler, president of the AFL-CIO, said in part, "The labor movement has a long and storied history of promoting nonviolent activism to effect change. In these troubling times, we urge all leaders across the ideological spectrum to join us in unequivocally defending the protection of freedom of speech without the threat of violence and hate that divides working people." National Nurses United, NNU, which represents nurses at some VA facilities, held rallies across the country last week protesting short staffing at VA facilities following an OIG report that stated that 139 facilities nationwide are short-staffed. If we missed anything, let us know. You can send us a note at tvlr.fm/contact, and we'll try to include it on next week's report. Also, a reminder that not everything gets included in the radio in our Last Week in Southern Labor segment. So if you want to see the exhaustive version of what happened last week in Southern Labor, you got to subscribe to the newsletter, TVLR at tvlr.fm. So if we missed anything, let us know, tvlr.fm/contact, and we will try to include it on next week's program. We now have on the line Nathan Shu, president of the American Federation of Musicians Local 80, which represents workers, musicians in Chattanooga and in Huntsville at the Huntsville Symphony Orchestra. Nathan is also a member of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE, in Chattanooga. Nathan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I really appreciate your time. We had your predecessor in the AFM, Taylor Brown, on the program. Gosh, was that, 3 years ago? It's been a minute since we had Taylor on the program, and so now we've got a new president in Local 80. So we gotta have a new profile for you all. So can you talk to us about what do the members of AFM Local 80 do?
So most of our members, as you said, some of them are members of the Huntsville Symphony Orchestra, and then we also have a lot of members in the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra, and also members of the Chattanooga Bach Choir. Those are our three main bargaining units that we work with. And then we have folks like myself. I'm not a member of any of those groups, but I freelance in the city of Chattanooga and around the area. And so, yeah, we use our union contracts for all the gigs that I play. Use that as best as I can. But yeah, anybody who plays music in the Chattanooga area, North Alabama and North Georgia area, we can help you out. That's what we do.
Fantastic, and we'll be getting your contact information or some contact information for the local. But I don't think that most people realize when they go to see the Huntsville Symphony Orchestra or the Chattanooga Bach Choir. That's crazy. I didn't realize that there was such a thing. I got to go and see that now. But I don't think that people realized that that those were unionized places. Why is it important for the Huntsville Symphony Orchestra, the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra, for any musician, really? Why do musicians need a union?
So one of the big things I think musicians need a union for is that obviously orchestras, if you haven't heard, they seem to be struggling. It's not always the most popular type of music nowadays, but it is very popular in the area, and I think for musicians, we all do this job because we love it. And so sometimes we are tempted to do it for less than what we should. So one of the big things that the union does is make sure that we all get paid appropriate amounts to do the job that we are trained to do. Most of the people on the stages for the Huntsville and the Chattanooga Symphony, if they at least have a bachelor's degree in music, a lot of them have a master's or even a doctorate in music. So these are extreme professionals in the field of music that are performing for folks every day. And so what we do is put together a good contract so that the musicians are taken care of. Their time is well paid for. Breaks happen when they should. We have paid time off, sick time, things like that. Just making sure that all the musicians are taken care of and paid appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give us a couple of the highlights from the contracts that you have with the employers of the Huntsville Symphony Orchestra, the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra, and the Bach Chattanooga Bach Choir? Can you what are some of the things that y'all are most proud of having been able to secure in those contracts?
Yeah, so this year I actually just put my signature on the Chattanooga Symphony's collective bargaining agreement 2 days ago at our opening concert. We had finally got it all ratified and got the paper in front of me with the executive director of the orchestra. So I got to put my signature on that. So I was very happy. We spent about, I think it was about 6-8 months negotiating that contract. And we had some nice wins. We increased our per service salary or per service wage. Musicians get paid in an interesting way. We get paid per service. So usually a service, that could be a rehearsal, performance, Sometimes those can be used as like sitting in an audition committee or sitting in an artistic committee meeting. But one service is what we get paid for rather than like an hourly rate. Usually a service lasts around 2.5 hours. And that's kind of our unit of, we get paid for a 2.5 hour segment. So we got a nice increase in that, 6% increase this year. So we were very happy to see that. And then we got an increase in our, small increase in our service guarantees. So every year, each contracted member is guaranteed a certain number of services. So we got a little increase in that. So that's going to increase their overall salary. One thing I was very happy to get in is some little minor things, but when I'm a percussionist, you can see some percussion instruments back here. So sometimes for a big Pops concert, there's, we're playing some pop piece of music from a movie or whatever, and there should be 10 percussionists, but that costs a lot of money and can be prohibitive from, being able to perform the piece. And it can be done with a few less than that, but it makes my job more difficult, makes the other percussionist's job more difficult. So we got some protections in there that now when we're asked to play like off of 2 pages of music, we get a 20% increase in our per service. So I was really happy to see that in there. And the once I explained like what we did to the executive director and the couple members of the board that were in the negotiations, they understood and we're very happy to be like, oh yeah, you're doing more work, you should get paid more money. And one of the things I was really happy to see with the negotiations with the Chattanooga Symphony was their willingness to learn what we do. The folks on the other side of the bargaining table, we had our executive director, who's fantastic, and then a couple lawyers that are on their board, but they were all very willing to they wanted to understand what we do and how it is we work and how it is we get paid and what all these little intricacies are. And once they were willing to learn, and once we explained how things work, they were like, oh yeah, that really makes sense. We'll definitely make that work. So it was a very collaborative negotiation, which was fantastic to have.
I do love hearing stories like that about how, through unionization and collective bargaining, particularly at these smaller outfits or where more people who are actually doing the supervising have a little bit more authority. I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that there's no like conflict between employers and employees and union workplaces, and there's like a lot of kind of fundamental like contra, what's the word that I'm looking for? Motivations and like things like that. But in these small places like the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra, I really do find that just having a collective voice for the workers, the workers being able to kind of assert the reality of what it's like to work there to the employers can sometimes be really all that's needed, because ultimately at the end of the day, management's people, employers are people, and the people on the other side of the bargaining table, they're just like you and me in like a real kind of fundamental human way. And so in a lot of times having that conversation itself can be really helpful, and so I'm really glad to hear that. Is there anything else? You talked about you just renegotiated a contract. I had no idea that was so recent. I might want to follow up with you a little bit and maybe write about that. Is there anything else that your local is really proud of? A grievance maybe that you've won, or anything else that you'd like to highlight?
There have been a couple little things that we've had to work through lately with. Just certain ways our contract is read, and certain things that we had a lot of turnover in our management over the past 2 years, I believe, and so there were some issues here and there that like things just kind of fell through the cracks. Somebody wasn't in the position to be taking care of things, and a certain member of our orchestra didn't get hired for a lot of work that they should have been. And so we brought that as a grievance, and worked through that and ended up winning. So that person has now gotten resolution that they were very happy with. And then almost immediately we had to redo another little thing for the same member, about, you know, them being able to hire who they wanted to fill in their section. And we were easily able to win that because we had a really good contract written. And once we presented it to the management and said, no, this is what the contract says, this is the way it has to be done, they were great about just saying, oh, yep, that's what it says, and we didn't do it right. So yeah, we'll make sure we make it right. So it did end up costing them a little extra, but now they know. And I was very happy with my Secretary Treasurer, Joey Demko. He's fantastic at all that sort of in the weeds paperwork and following the rules, and he's very, very helpful to me. I wouldn't be nearly as effective as a president without him. So.
Oh, well, that's the only way that a person can be an effective union president if they've got a good team. You can't. I mean, that's like the whole thing, right? The whole logic of unionism is that, you know, you're no good by yourself. You can't do everything by yourself. You got to have a good team. So that's great to hear. You talked about why it's important for musicians to be in a union. And for those folks just tuning in, we're talking to Nathan Shue, president of the American Federation of Musicians, Local 80, representing musicians in North Alabama, East Tennessee, and North Georgia. It's one thing to believe that, yes, musicians should be a union. I'm a union member. I pay my dues, and there we go. You know, I'm part of the union. It's one thing to do that. And then it's another thing to, you know, be president of the local and you know, spend so much time doing union stuff, the majority of which you don't get paid for, right? I mean, and so what made you want to be more involved in the union part of your work as a musician?
I think a big part of it was that I saw the other folks who had been leading the Local 80 for a while, and there wasn't a whole lot of willingness for others to step up and lead. And I grew up on a farm in Indiana, cornfields of Indiana, and one of the things that my parents, grandparents, whole family taught me was that when you see something not getting done, well, you might be the one that needs to step up and do it. And when I find something that I truly care about, which is, you know, the welfare of my fellow musicians, it was just something that I'm like, I have capacity in my life to be able to do this. And so I want to help the other musicians in the area, and the other unions in the area as well. So it's just important for me. It's a way of giving back, if you will. It's also a way to help myself and make sure that my work will continue and will be paid appropriately, and I'll be taken care of. And hopefully by leading through example, others will be willing to, you know, step in and step up and do some of this work as well.
If someone is a musician in your area, in and around Chattanooga, Huntsville, Northwest Georgia, where can they go to learn more about Local 80 and join?
Yeah, so we have a website, afm80.org. It's a little old, but it's there. So that's got contact info. There's some email addresses on there, so you can, anything that happens on there, my Secretary Treasurer, Joey Demko, he'll find out about it. He'll let me know. He'll let the rest of our board members know. You can hunt me down directly, Facebook, Instagram, Nathan Shue. Find me out and about playing gigs as well. And yeah, we'd love to help in any way possible, whether you're part of the union or not. We want to help the musicians in this city do the best they can.
And just to say, I just Googled AFM Local 80. It's the first thing that comes up. And I just want to underscore one more time, you know, we've been talking a lot about the symphony orchestras and the Bach choir and how y'all have collective bargaining agreements with them. But you started the interview with, and I just want to make sure that people heard that you're not in any of those bargaining units. You are a freelance musician, and you still get value from the union. And so if you're a freelance musician playing gigs, playing at bars, stuff like that, there can still be a value for you in being a part of a union of musicians in your city, right, Taylor? Or right, right, Nathan?
That's all good. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the reasons why I wanted to be president is to try to bring more freelancers into our group and to be able to see what else I can make happen for the freelance musicians in our city. I've been playing in a few different groups in town, and I play church gigs regularly, play with a ragtime band, and I'm really trying to get in the weeds about what it's like to do all these bar gigs. That's not something I have done a ton of. I do a lot of musical theater stuff and church gigs, but I also dabble in the scene of smaller music venues. One of the things I've found is that the better that the orchestra is doing, the higher that they're getting paid, that raises the bar for all of the musicians in town. So I've been able to negotiate with some of the musical theater and the churches that I play at. I told them, I was like, hey, the symphony got a 6% raise this year. Can you guys match that? Because that's what professional musicians are getting paid in this city. And they were willing to do that. So I hope to be able to do the same kind of stuff for everybody that's playing all types of music. Jazz, rock, indie, folk, whatever you're playing. DJs as well. Happy to help.
Well, there you go. I might send this interview to some of the people who sing at the choir at the church that I've been going to recently. So, Nathan Shue, president of the American Federation of Musicians Local 80, representing musicians in Northeast Alabama, East Tennessee, and Northwest Georgia. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communications system for unions.
Thank you very much for joining me. I want to say a few words regarding the terrible murder yesterday of Charlie Kirk, someone who I strongly disagreed with on almost every issue, but who was clearly a very smart and effective communicator and organizer, and someone unafraid to get out into the world and engage the public. My condolences go out to his wife and his family. A free and democratic society, which is what America is supposed to be about, depends upon the basic premise that people can speak out, organize, and take part in public life without fear, without worrying that they might be killed, injured, or humiliated for expressing their political views. In fact, that is the essence of what freedom is about and what democracy is about. You have a point of view, that's great. I have a point of view that is different than yours. That's great. Let's argue it out. We make our case to the American people at the local, state, and federal levels, and we hold free elections in which the people decide what they want. That's called freedom and democracy. And I want as many people as possible to participate in that process without fear. Freedom and democracy is not about political violence. It is not about assassinating public officials. It is not about trying to intimidate people who speak out on an issue. Political violence, in fact, is political cowardice. It means that you cannot convince people of the correctness of your ideas, and you have to impose them through force. Every American, no matter what one's political point of view may be, must condemn all forms of political violence and all forms of intimidation. We must welcome and respect dissenting points of view. That's what our Constitution is about. That's what our Bill of Rights is about. That, in fact, is what freedom is about. The murder of Charlie Kirk is part of a disturbing rise in political violence that threatens to hollow out public life and make people afraid of participating. From the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol, to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, to the attack on Paul Pelosi, to the attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Whitmer, to the murder of Minnesota's Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, to the arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, to the shooting of United Health Executive Brian Thompson, and the shooting several years ago of Representative Steve Scalise, this chilling rise in violence has targeted public officials across the political spectrum. Sadly, this is not a new phenomenon. We all remember the assassinations of President Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Senator Robert F. Kennedy, John Lennon, Medgar Evers, and the attempted assassinations of President Ronald Reagan and Alabama Governor George Wallace. This is a difficult and contentious moment in American history. Democracy in our country and throughout the world is under attack. And there are a lot of reasons for that which need serious discussion. But bottom line, if we honestly believe in democracy, if we believe in freedom, all of us must be loud and clear. Political violence, regardless of ideology, is not the answer and must be condemned. Thank you very much.
But before I begin, I do want to take a moment to address the horrific political assassination that just occurred today in Utah. Charlie Kirk is dead, yet another victim of gun violence in a nation where what should be a rarity has turned into a plague. It cannot be a question of political agreement or alignment that allows us to mourn. It must be the shared notion of humanity that binds us all. And that humanity, it reminds us that this news is not just that of the murder of a prominent political figure, but also the news of a wife who grieves her husband, of a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old who will grow up without a father, and the fact that there are families feeling that same anguish right now in Colorado as they wait for their children, also shot in a school, to emerge from surgery. It is the same anguish that too many across our city and our nation reckon with in silence every day as we contend with an epidemic of suffering. We can and we must do more to challenge a status quo that has allowed this pain to become routine, that has allowed the question of which mass shooting to respond to the news of one that is shared. And it is incumbent upon all of us to repair the tears in our shared civic fabric and to make our nation one that is worthy of its greatest ideals.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. And you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Felt a little weird to do like a news type show without addressing the big news elephant in the room. So had some thoughts on the event from Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mamdani, two politicians that I really appreciate, and I thought they did an excellent job, and I really don't have anything else to add to that. So if you want to give us a call about anything else, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. Adam, there's a couple plugs that you wanted to give us.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to shout out some of the events that Labor Notes has coming up, labornotes.org/events. And on September 16th, they have a What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart workshop. And that is a really important one because as union folks, sometimes we run into difficulties. Sometimes we are let down by our siblings or by the institutions, or we get frustrated, right? And so this is a really important workshop, What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart, September 16th at 6:30 p.m. Central. So it's a good way to talk about, like, how do you organize in those scenarios and really change the culture of your union. I'm really excited to see that on September 20th, there's going to be a North Carolina Troublemaker School. So that's really cool. September 29th is a Stewards Workshop on assertive grievance handling. So this one is, specifically for stewards and elected officers who work cases, right? But, assertive grievance handling is a great workshop to take, a way to win creatively without going to arbitration, hopefully. That's always cool. So wanted to shout that out. And what else do we have? They do have their Stewards Workshop scheduled for October as well. It's going to be on Just Cause. I believe Robert Schwartz, the great Robert Schwartz, is going to be leading that one. So if you handle any discipline cases, that will be a really good one to go to, October 27th at 6:30 p.m. Central. and of course save the date for the big Labor Notes Conference in 2026. That's going to be June, of course, in Chicago. And, also wanted to remind folks that Alabama Arise is holding its annual meeting on the 27th of September. That's a Saturday. And you can participate online or in person in Montgomery. You can go to alarise.org to find out more about that.
Adam, North Alabama's unions won a victory at the Huntsville City Council meeting on Thursday night, September the 11th. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it turns out sometimes you can really fight City Hall and actually win. So the North Alabama Area Labor Council and quite a few groups have been speaking out about an issue called City Detect. And so the idea was that Mayor Tommy Battle and the City Council were considering a contract that was going to be about $1 million, over $300,000 a year for 3 years, to put AI cameras on the back of garbage trucks, apparently to surveil properties for code violations. And, this was not something that was on the top of our radar necessarily, but we kept hearing concerns in the community about it. Folks tipped us off about it, asked if we could work on it. And of course, the more we talked to people, the more we talked to our members and our allies, it was overwhelmingly clear how deeply unpopular this idea was, right? Because it's a questionable use of taxpayer dollars. It is a real concern when it comes to surveillance and how this information is going to be used. Is it going to be used to target people who are already struggling? Because often if there are code violations, there's a story that goes deeper than that, right? Typically, you're talking about folks who are elderly or possibly disabled or just dealing with other issues, right? And so North Alabama Area Labor Council, we started speaking out as well. I know there were other groups involved. Huntsville 5051 comes to mind as one for sure that have been speaking out as well. So we put out an action alert. And shout out to our sister Whitney for running point on this campaign. And we put out an action alert, and in less than 5 or 6 days, over 100 Huntsvillians contacted the city council about this issue. And it was just, it really resonated with folks, and it got the city council's attention. It very much did. They did reach out to us, and they heard the opposition. And so we attended the meeting on Thursday night to make our opposition known in person as well. There were quite a few activists and organizers there as well. Indivisible was there rallying around immigration rights. And so, it was a full hall in the city council meeting. And Mayor Tommy Battle announced that he would be withdrawing the contract, in the face of such public opposition. Now, he did caution that he may bring it back in 6 to 8 months. He claims that the public needs to be educated further about it. But as many of the speakers who spoke during citizen comments made the point that we don't really want more education on this issue. We don't need more education on this issue. We were pretty clear that we didn't want it. It's not needed. If you're going to blow $1 million of the city's funds, we can think of a lot of better ways to use that money, right? This helped these folks who need help. That's a good place to start. Because, interestingly enough, the first thing that happened at that city council meeting was a hearing, public hearing on a gentleman's property that had been cited for code violations. And, there was a bunch of junk in his driveway, in his yard. And I understand that the neighbors are certainly tired of seeing it. And this guy had to get up in front of this full room at the city council and defend himself and, his right to hold on to this property and be okay. And he was an elderly fella. His wife is dying, has very bad conditions. He cannot leave her alone. And, the poor guy talked about how he had been trying to clean it up. He just couldn't do it. He needs help. Right. And And so that was really powerful to hear and to see that testimony from this poor guy. And, it really, I think, hammered home the point to people that there are deeper stories to these code violations. And simply, putting AI cameras for more surveillance on our community is not a good use of funds, right? And there are other ways we can use funds to address those sort of issues. If you're concerned about blight, if you're concerned about property code violations, if that's relevant to you, well, then this puts some resources together to expand the ways we help people dealing with that. So it was really a cool event to see the power of the people come through. It something both City Councilwoman Michelle Watkins in District 1 and City Council President John Meredith of District 5, they both emphasized the success of the campaign and really wanted to hammer home that, when Huntsville speaks up, it sometimes, really can work. And so we want to encourage folks to stay engaged. And something that I shared with the council president that I really meant, and I'll say here is that, we're wanting as a labor council to build on that momentum to push positive proposals. This come up with some solutions. This come up with some policies that are really going to support working people. We certainly have ideas about that and look forward to, continued conversations with the council, but just want to give a shout out to everyone who helped on that. Well over 100 folks who took the action alert, the people who called, who made appointments with their council members, the people who showed up to the council meetings, the people who shared on social media and got their friends involved in it. It all made a difference. And, like I said, this time we fought City Hall, and for now we've won, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to share this on, so the concern was over AI cameras on garbage trucks that would go around and detect property violations or whatever. And obviously one of the, there's lots of concerns that we had about it. You can check out northalabamalabor.org to see the press release that North Alabama's unions put out about, about the win at the city council. And you can see more of the reasons why we were opposed to it. But one of the concerns was obviously privacy and security. The company that Huntsville City Council was considering doing this with is called City Detect, and so you can go on their website right now and look at the thing, citydetect.com, and they have frequently asked questions. And one of them is, how do you handle privacy concerns? And I kid you not, I'm reading this straight from their website. This is what they say: images are captured from public spaces where there is no expectation of privacy. Legally, there are no privacy concerns. Look, I mean, I don't know about you, but I actually do have some level of privacy expectation with respect to my yard and my house and garage. I have some level of privacy expectation, and there is no, they have no thing about how are we going to be using this data? Who are we going to be selling this data to in the future? How are we securing this data so other people can't get to it? I mean, none of that kind of stuff. So it's just really, is a bad thing.
Right. And I do also, for the record, want to say that the District 2 City Councilman, David Little, didn't seem to have a whole lot to say. He did say on Facebook that folks were spreading misinformation on the interwebs, he says. And so someone asked him, well, can you share some accurate information? And he simply replied with the City Detect website. Also, that is the company trying to sell him something. So I'm sure that's totally objective, factual information.
Yeah, this company that stood to gain $1 million, no reason for them to be weird about the information. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So the lesson was that, rank and file Huntsvillians came together, union folks, non-union folks, just, the people, just everyday people. And we spoke up and we made our voices heard. And, they had to back down, at least for now. And so we'll have to keep an eye on it for sure. This is the sort of thing that happens quietly, typically. They sneak stuff like this through all the time in local government, state government, federal government, of course, as well. But often at the local level, people, aren't really going to budget hearings. People don't really go to city council meetings and school board meetings. And so if you're not paying attention to what they're doing, they will sneak through some ridiculous stuff. And this was a dumb idea. We could sit here and go into all kinds of reasons why it was a dumb idea, but the bottom line was it was a dumb idea, and it was a dumb waste of money. And there's so many other things you could do that are better for this community. And that's why we spoke up. And, we're proud that we've tabled this for now, and we're going to keep on speaking up.
Yep. We're going to get to one story from Boss Watch. You're going to have to subscribe to the newsletter to get the rest of it. But there was a incident in Texas that Jordan Barab, I think we can call him a friend of the show, former OSHA official, great guy, Confined Space newsletter. Check it out on his website, jordanbarab.com/confined space. He has a story out of Trinity, Texas, where 3 workers died in a manhole last week after 2 rescuers were overcome climbing into a manhole filled with sewage to rescue the original worker. All 3 died. Trinity County Chief Deputy Jeremy Carroll described what happened. He said the men were working on a lift station which moves the sewage through pipes, so the crews, from what we gather, were not sent to work on any issues or any underground issues. They were simply working on the motor for the lift station. While completing their assigned job, Carroll said, one man went into the manhole to stop sewage from backing into their work area. He said the worker then fell unconscious, and another went to help him. Then the third went in to try to save the other 2. All 3 died. At that point, the gas overcame them. With his alarm going off, the gas meter, which said H2S, hydrogen sulfide gas. Carroll said they did not recover all 3 bodies until a significant amount of time after. The manhole was contaminated with, like I said, toxic hydrogen sulfide gas, which is a well-known naturally occurring byproduct of decomposing sewage. OSHA warns that high concentrations of hydrogen sulfide can cause rapid unconsciousness, knockdown, or immediate collapse within 1 to 2 breaths, breathing stops, and death within minutes. The 3 workers were identified as John Nelson Sr., Bradley Reitzman, and Brad Hutton. Multiple deaths in confined space incidents were once common before OSHA issued its general industry confined space standard in 1993, according to Barab. One worker goes down into an unmonitored, unventilated confined space and passes out from hydrogen sulfide or oxygen deprivation, and his buddy sees him and jumps in to help him. He is overcome, his buddy sees him, and repeats the deadly process. That kind of thing happened commonly. Then he talks about NIOSH's 1979 criteria for a recommended standard working in confined spaces that talked about how far more rescuers actually died than initial victims in incidents like these. Barab says that manholes are well-recognized locations for hydrogen sulfide, either from rotting sewage or other organic material. OSHA has had a confined space standards on the books since 1993, which protects sewage workers if the employer complies with the requirements of the standard. That standard requires confined spaces to be tested for toxic gases or oxygen shortage before workers enter, and ventilated if gases are detected. There must be an attendant up top who is in communication with the entrant, and there must be a means of non-entry rescue, which means that there must be a way to remove the worker from the space without a rescuer entering. This is usually done using a winch attached to the entering worker. Workers must also be trained on how to prevent injuries and deaths in confined spaces, and a permit must be completed before entry that assures that all safety measures have been implemented. 2 of the 3 workers were employed by H2O Innovation, and 1 worked for Hydro Clear Services. The president and CEO of H2O Innovation said, "Our thoughts and prayers go out to the families and loved ones of these 3 people who lost their lives." H2O Innovation is a Canadian company with over 1,100 employees that does water, wastewater, and water reuse treatment for municipal and industrial customers in Canada and 15 states. Earlier this year, the company was cited for violations of OSHA's respirator and hazard communication standards, and in 2021, H2O Innovation received a $75,000 citation for trenching violations, including one repeat violation. The company had also been cited for 2 trenching violations earlier in 2021. So clearly not a company very actually concerned with the safety of its employees. This segment of Boss Watch Union Busters covers national updates. It's sponsored by Labor Lab, which is an employer watchdog organization. They are committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that union busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are the new filings from this week. Integra Healthcare Equipment in Illinois hired the Independent Center for Worker Education for almost $4,000 a day. There is a union election ongoing there. Tissenderlo Curley Incorporated in Arizona hired GRCA. Workers still won that union election even though the union busters did not file until after the election. Republic Services in California hired Action Resources for almost $4,000 a day. That union election is still open. And Marcus Hotels, doing business as Hilton Madison Monona Terrace in Wisconsin, hired Action Resources for also almost $4,000 a day. Workers won that union election even though the union busters did not file until after the election was over. That is it for the first half of our program. We've got a great second half of the program lined up for you. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube to watch that. If you don't, though, we appreciate you tuning in to us on the radio, and we'll see you next week. Okay, off the radio now. We are... We're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back with Overtime. I see that we got a caller on the line. We'll take that call when we get back. If anybody else wants to get where that person is, give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. We'll take your calls, talk about whatever you want to talk about. We love talking about union stuff, though, so give us a call about that, 844-899-8857. We will be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party explorer. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host here is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. We appreciate everybody that hangs out with us in the chat on YouTube and Facebook as well. Joe and Mel have told us good morning. Good morning, Joe and Mel. We appreciate you. Got a bunch of people watching us on YouTube. Go ahead and like the stream. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. When we were talking about the City Detect stuff, we had a couple of people chatting about that. Next Generation Carriers said congrats on the win. Huntsville Dim Worker said hashtag Tommy Battle BS. Yeah, indeed. Benjo said Tommy is saying he needs to educate us more about the new surveillance, so be on the lookout for the next time they bring it up. Yeah, we can't. We're going to be keeping an eye on that as North Alabama's unions. Electrobuzz says presumably about the older gentleman who was coming to kind of plead his case about his property violations to come together to help the man not condemn him. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these property violations can be fixed for a relatively low cost, right? And so if we're talking about spending $1 million on property violations, well, and I know it can get kind of dicey because, or it might get dicey, I don't know. I mean, some of this kind of moral hazard stuff is overstated, but, I could potentially see the argument like, oh, well, if the city starts fixing these things, then that's going to incentivize more people to not do them, then the city's going to have to do them, blah, 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 blah. But nevertheless, you could spend that money on, like, paying people to mow old, poor people's yards if they need it or something like that instead of this AI detection company. Something like that, right?
Yeah, I think Quirky Geek Girl made the point that you might want to send out a social worker. And that had been on my mind this whole, fiasco is like, if folks have let their yard get super overgrown, there's junk everywhere. Like if it's become clearly a problem, well, they need help. Like,
yep.
Obviously, we don't know. I don't know what it is. You can't just judge from the outside to know what that is, but they need some kind of help, right? So, I was really proud of our community for uniting around that.
Here's a PSA for folks that they might enjoy. Quirky Geek Girl said, my ex-boyfriend went into Street View code and removed the images of his house. He didn't want people to Google his address. Folks in the chat didn't know that you could do that. I didn't know that you could do that, but apparently you can. Very interesting. Huntsville Dim Worker says, there was a program early on to protect endangered plant species in the Northeast U.S. where some views were blocked. Can I call in, talk about Joe Burns? Yes, going to get to that in just a second. Let's see. All right, there we go. Appreciate all the chats. Thank you very much. Caller on the line from a 256 area code. I believe this is Dwayne. I was expecting a call from him because of our interview to start the show. Hope he was able to hear that, and I am interested in your thoughts on that. Dwayne, thanks for calling in.
Well, you're welcome. I was so glad to hear that. Excellent. I've known about 80 years, and it was good to hear about the book about Bullock. Now, on my history of horrors that's been on there for years, and I've been on here for years talking to you guys about this, I have the actual couple of paragraphs where the federal judge has declared cruel and unusual punishment from back in 2017, particularly for the handicapped and those that were in the mental hospitals that are scattered throughout the state in these prisons in solitary confinement for their own protection. And I really want to be clear about that. And where Eddie was saying Governor Ivey had talked about it following having her Alabama solution, that's the reason for the title of the movie. And on the site that I've got it, I have Charlotte Kaufman, one of the producers, that is actually with the LA Times interview is speaking to Kay Ivey saying, let cameras see what it's like in these prisons, Governor. And I also have one of the guards where I'm with them in front of the Department of Corrections talking about there being less than 10 guards guarding Limestone Correctional Facility at one time period a few years ago. And what that was like, you know, no soap, no tissue like you were saying. I mean, breaking bars of soap off to divide it so they can take a shower. Persons being behind there, guys, that you can't go in, you're one guard. You've got to try to get someone from inside there to drag the body of where someone's been beat or harmed or raped, to open the door to pull them out. Have you got me? And that's consistent and still going on. So not being aware of it is part of the problem, and us not having empathy when it comes to these situations, or doing things that will stop recidivism. Couldn't be more clear about that. And as far as what you were talking about, Adam, about the monitoring your yard as you're going by with the garbage truck, years ago we faced a similar situation in Morgan County. The district commissioner of the more wealthy area there, Point Mallard, I believe it was, wanted the whole county to be gone over like you would at Point Mallard. And I was instrumental in helping to prevent that from happening. And then the other was, are you aware that Huntsville is coming across toward Lacey Springs into Morgan County in the city limits?
Yep.
Yeah,
Are you aware of that?
It's like multiple counties now, right?
Yeah.
Limestone, Morgan,
yeah, and get ready.
Madison. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, get ready for what happened back then. What I believe to be a group of in power, wanting control of the city of Huntsville coming into Morgan County, put forth a candidate to become the county commissioner for that area. In other words, they're going to pick where the water pipes go, where the sewage goes. You got where the money from Morgan County goes. Right. And we had the normal person that was always our person, but someone that said they lived in the county. The place looked wrecked. The place that he said that he lived had cracked windows and a not mowed yard. And I said, prove you live there. Now follow me. If he had been allowed to go into our little district when we had our little vote, he would have been voted on by the entire county at the end, where his family had a greater population and knowledge. More people knew him. Got me?
Right.
And I said, show me a water bill, show me a power bill. And, you know, and when the meeting came, it was only Dwayne that was there. And the Secretary of State said, Dwayne is correct. He must prove what Dwayne wants to know, that he really lives there. And a week before we were both going to go speak at Decatur Country Club to tell our ideas of this, he backed out of the race. So, one person, that was me, can make a difference. And I have made a difference. And yeah, and I made a difference as far as getting Commissioner Ham to have someone go and see those persons that were previously bedridden to doctors ordered care in our facilities, that became homeless, that wound up in prison because of it, to be seen at least twice a month, where for years they had never been seen before, guys.
Wow.
But I appreciate you having your guests on. I'm still thinking about running. It's just going to kind of depend on how things fall. If the movie falls out about that time where I can go on the air to talk about these things, you know, that will help me, because I don't have the funds without, you know, like you guys saying something, or the movie coming out where I can go on television and radio and newspaper to say, these are the things that we need to look at. And I also want to tell you, on Dale Jackson's show, Jacob, in his first interview after he said that he was running, he told Dale he was open to building another prison. Now, that's just completely outrageous. We are already spending over $2,200,000 plus the $50 million bond that we borrowed against, that we will be paying back for 30 years for the prison that's supposed to go where in the district where the Porch Creek Indians are. And they're a lot of the whole reason that legislator that wants it there is getting a prison there. Right. But I know I probably spoke too long there, guys. But I appreciate y'all a lot. Appreciate the subject matter. And if I could ever be assistance to you guys or anybody, let me know. History of Horrors on Quora. History of Horrors, the Alabama Department of Corrections. All kinds of stuff. I'm even videoing the HBO crew that are doing their videoing. Got me?
Okay.
So,
Okay, cool. And I did want to share, Dwayne, that I think there will be some screenings happening in North Alabama of the Alabama Solution at some point later this fall. So we'll definitely be sharing those on the air, once we find out what, any details of that. But yeah, I'm really excited for that to come out.
Yeah, I would love to come to those too, guys. I really would. I think it's going to be very eye-opening to everyone.
Sounds good.
Take care. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Dwayne. Appreciate you, brother.
We got another caller on the line. This one from a 617 area code. 617 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is John Murphy calling from the Next Generation Carriers podcast.
John from Next Generation Carriers podcast. If anybody else wants to get where John is, you can give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. And you can also leave us a voicemail at any time if you're not listening to us live. What's on your mind, John?
Hey, this goes out to all the city carriers. Next year, in August 2026, the NALC is having their convention in Los Angeles. And currently, it's usually August, September, October, and November is when your local branches start nominating and electing delegates to that convention. So if you're a CCA or PTF or just a regular carrier, please become active in our union. Currently, the NALC with Brian Renfro has its head in the sand, and we need a next generation of carriers to step up. So if you're listening, look into your branch bylaws and figure out when the nominations are and elections, and head out to LA next year. Become a delegate. I'm also calling because
really quickly before we go to the next thing, the convention is when?
August 3rd to August 7th in Los Angeles.
So August of 2026. And so when do branches typically elect or appoint delegates?
This year. So it's vital that new carriers learn.
So you said like August, September, or October of this year? Like in the next couple of months?
Yeah, this year. Yeah, union meetings are different throughout the country and depending on your branch. So it might have already happened or it might be happening.
Okay.
So some branches I know take the summer off, so they come back and then they do the nominations and the election the next month. So just letting the carriers know, because if they're listening to this podcast, they should be pretty active already.
Right. Yeah. If you're tuned into this on Saturday, you probably need to be running as a delegate. I would definitely second that, and I really appreciate you putting that out there, John, because it's really, really a cool experience to be a delegate to a national convention of your union and to participate in that. And it's a way to have a voice and to speak up for your local and speak up for your brothers and sisters and, really shape the direction of your union and, put your 2 cents in when it comes to the leadership of your union and the constitution of your union. And it just makes a big difference. It's a great experience. I've been a delegate to the National Education Association and the National Staff Organization and, learned a whole lot from it. Got involved in a lot of debates, ran into caucuses and just really tried to make the most of it. And so you get to participate in that democratic organization or democratic assembly, get to organize with folks, find like-minded folks. So, yeah, I can't echo your comments enough. It's really important for folks to run, find out those rules, find out what your local does and when they're doing it and, how you can step up. And it's something... we need more folks stepping up for union leadership. And we talked to AFM 80 president earlier, Nathan, who was talking about they needed more people to step up and do stuff, right? That's what got him involved. And so anyone listening, please do, take John's advice, run as a delegate.
Yeah, excellent. Maxwell in the chat says 1 minute behind, but NALC delegate selection is based on local branch bylaws. Yeah, absolutely. But but appreciate the notification, John, that those are going to be coming up or may have already expired. But look into that. Check out your branch bylaws and try to get elected delegates. So Yeah. So, John, what was the second thing?
The second thing, I want to plug an event that's coming up with labor leader and labor author Joe Burns. He's coming on to our podcast, Next Generation Carriers, to talk directly to postal workers and specifically the city carriers. The event's called Reviving Unionism Inside the NALC. It's Sunday, September 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're a city carrier or just a postal worker that wants to help revive our unions, check us out. It's nextgenerationcarriers.com/Zoom, ZOOM. You just register and you could hop in the Zoom. It's free. It's open to everyone. And for the folks that don't know who Joe Burns is, he's a veteran union negotiator and labor lawyer with over 25 years of experience negotiating labor agreements. He is currently the director of collective bargaining for the Association of Flight Attendants, the CWA union. He also graduated from the New York University School of Law. Prior to law school, he worked in a public sector hospital and was president of his AFM Local. He wrote 3 books. This is the books that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about his most recent book, which is Class Struggle Unionism. And his second book was Strike Back, Using the Militant Tactics of Labor's Past to Reignite the Public Sector Unionism Today. And as we currently see with the federal workforce, we're under attack, and labor actually has no collective action or strategy on how to fight back against these billionaires' attacks. So we need union members to come in and learn labor theory and labor strategies, because our current leadership doesn't have a strategy. So it's up to the rank and file. So again, if anyone's listening that's a city carrier or just a postal worker, it's September 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Joe Burns. If you want to jump onto the Zoom, go to nextgenerationcarriers.com/Zoom. We need a new direction, and we need educated members on how to fight back. So thank you.
And you'll also be, will you be live streaming this on your YouTube channel as well?
We will try.
Okay. And if it's not live streamed, you'll upload it after the fact, right?
Yeah, it'll be uploaded onto our podcast under YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Great.
That's
John,
awesome.
Appreciate it.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. If you want to get where he was, like I said, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We've got our next guest in the Zoom. Colin Smalley is president of the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, IFPTE, Local 777 in Chicago, Illinois, representing civil servants at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Colin, welcome to the program. His opinions are his personal opinions and are not representative of his agency. Thank you for taking your time.
Thanks for having me here, brother. It's good to be back.
We're going to be talking about the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which is the private sector, which is the public sector, federal sector equivalent of the NLRB. The NLRB adjudicates disputes arising over private sector labor law, the National Labor Relations Board. So the FLRA, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, adjudicates disputes arising over federal sector labor law. Before we get to that, though, can you explain a little bit about what your members do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I represent Army Corps of Engineers workers, like you said. We currently represent the Chicago district, which has got everything from a tugboat on Lake Michigan, a crew, we represent the crew on the tugboat, but we also represent lock and dam operators, but also some of the professions that you'd expect with our union's name, scientists, engineers, economists, accountants. We're a wall-to-wall shop. We're also right now organizing a wall-to-wall shop in the Army Corps' Sacramento, California office. And we're kind of in the process of merging with our Pittsburgh district local. as well right now. So really doing a lot to try to represent, pretty much everybody who works for the Corps of Engineers other than supervisors. And so that perspective, that diversity gives us a lot of cool opportunities to stand up for each other.
Yes, I longtime listeners will know that I worked for the Corps of Engineers for a long time, and I love the Corps of Engineers. Very cool place to work, and lots of cool work being done by the Corps, and a huge diversity of people. I mean, you have secretaries to, like you said, accountants, engineers, scientists, lots of different job descriptions, and my local in particular represents people beyond the Corps of Engineers, represents, literally thousands of civil servants on Redstone Arsenal, from the grocery store workers at the commissary, which is run by the government and is somehow, not super scary to people in Alabama. I'll leave that conversation for another day. To technical GS-15s who are internationally recognized in their field for their expertise and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. The federal sector labor movement. There's a lot of a really cool diversity there, even just within one agency, but especially if you go outside of one agency, then you get all sorts of folks. And
absolutely,
your members do a lot of really cool work. They do a lot of really important work. Why do union protections support rather than undermine the important work that you and your members do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we, as you can imagine, with that wide a spread of different occupations, we have people that work in a lot of different environments. So whether it's at a lock and dam, either locking boats or doing maintenance, overhauls, that kind of thing, or whether it's, like I said, out on a vessel on Lake Michigan in storms, things like that. Or recently, we had a lot of our members deploy to help with the Hurricane Helene recovery in North and South Carolina and Tennessee. And then also we've had folks deploying out west for wildfire recovery, even out in Hawaii for wildfire recovery out there. And so, one of the things that we believe in is bargaining for and having workers directly involved in the safety of their workplaces. We think that is always going to create a better outcome. But at the bottom line, I think that one of the things that I love about the federal sector unions is that our members, by and large, they really believe in the work that they're doing. They're there to serve their community, often working for less money than they could get doing similar jobs in the private sector. I mean, a lot of folks. I mean, I have multiple PhD, folks with doctorates. They spend over a decade becoming experts in their field. We have people with law degrees and that kind of thing. And, even if they're not lawyers, but they just have that depth of expertise and they bring that every day to the service of their communities and to the public. And like I said, it's the areas where we work, but it's also nationally. We do deploy, we do support other districts and I know the shop you worked in, Jake, was, would support all over the country or maybe even all over the world. So, it's one of these things that I think our members are bringing expertise. And so when they're bargaining not only for improving their working conditions, but they're also in many ways eager to improve the delivery of our mission and the way that we serve the public. And, another example of that, when I was on Capitol Hill last February with IFPTE's lobby week, one of the things that I was talking about was some of the Republican representatives from Indiana, especially. We made an effort to stop by a number of their offices. And one of the things that we were talking about was, there's a lot of sense that people, regardless of who they voted for in the last presidential election, do have an interest in reducing fraud and waste and abuse in the federal sector. And so I want to make 2 points on that. One is that the people that put on boots every day, the people that are out there doing the actual work, they're the experts on how to make a process more efficient. I guarantee you that any one of my employees that are in my union with me could come up with a list of things that would make our jobs more efficient. One of which just to use a current topic example, telework, people are telling me with these extra, I mean, here in Chicago, it's common for people to live an hour and a half commute away from downtown. And so for them to now have 3 extra hours of their day away from their family, away from their outside responsibilities, they're more tired at work. They're more, they struggle to maintain that productivity. And what we had that was bargained and negotiated was a balance. It was a hybrid. It was a way for people to be efficient at home or wherever, and then balance that with being productive together in a team environment where you're face to face and you're able to just resolve, cut through issues faster that way. So, we had really found what worked for us. And so all these rollbacks are making things less efficient. They're making it harder for us to deliver. And the other point that I wanted to make on this, as far as efficiency goes, not only are people looking at, the fine points of the, how we do our jobs, but I want to point out something else, that a collective bargaining agreement at its core is an agreement between the workers and the management that works directly with them on how to resolve issues. Before CBAs in the federal sector, there were, let's say, I'll just pick 4 things. Equal opportunity employment. If you've been discriminated against or you've asked for an accommodation to do your job despite your disability, or maybe discipline, right? Discipline that can be challenged if you're being suspended or laid off or whatever. Maybe it's safety issues like safety inspections. Maybe it's you've been disciplined and you've made it through that process and now you want to challenge it. You're going to the Merit System Protection Board, right? Instead of 4 or 5 different ways of challenging when you've got a disagreement with your boss, the collective bargaining agreement provides one streamlined option where your management and the workers all know the rules. Now, we would say they don't always follow it. They'd say we don't always follow it, but at least we have a common set of rules. We understand what to do. We don't have to know all these different ways of solving problems, right? So that's an efficiency in itself. Collective bargaining, for as much as it may be painful to sit down and bargain out a collective bargaining agreement, a term agreement, there's a reason those are only done, every few years in most shops, because it is an investment of time and energy and emotion and organizing. But the flip side of it is that we have a common framework. And when you take away that framework and you replace it with all these different ways, all these different things you have to know, it takes away focus. It takes away our ability, again, to do what we do on a day-to-day basis for our agencies and for the public.
Absolutely. Lots of really compelling arguments there for why union protections support rather than undermine your mission. And so where are workers at the Corps of Engineers specifically, and maybe even just specifically at your office, where are they at with respect to union rights at this moment? I know across the federal government there's actually, you got a lot of executive orders out there, but you have, from reports that I'm hearing, you're having some agencies in some districts kind of ignoring the executive orders until there's a final ruling on them. You have others, kind of zealously following the executive orders without much...
Or going beyond.
Yeah, and going beyond the executive orders, that really feeling like they've been kind of unleashed to wreak havoc on their employees, and everything in between, right? You got so where are people? Is there an agency standard at the Corps of Engineers, and then if not, where are people at your office specifically? Where are they at with respect to union rights?
So one cool thing I want to highlight, Jake, that just happened this last week is that we had a call of unions across all the Corps of Engineers. We had 5 different international unions, locals from 5 different internationals on that call.
Wow.
And so it was really powerful, right? I mean, this idea that we're getting people together that a lot of times don't always talk to each other. So we're not like the VA or the IRS or Even the Postal Service, where there's these national level contracts across the Corps of Engineers. We don't have that. What we've got is about half of our workforce is organized into unions. And among that half that's organized, there's a bunch of different locals all over the country. And on this call this week, we talked about where we are. And I think generally speaking, it can be summarized as the agency is generally waiting to see how this litigation plays out. They're waiting to have their hand forced by higher authorities. But I will say there are some cases where they are being forced that way. One of them's dues. They cut off our dues back in March, just like a lot of agencies did. I believe that was across the entire Department of Defense. It wasn't just the Corps of Engineers. In fact, our management had no say in it. They had no warning of it. It just happened by the Department of Defense. So there's some things like that. We had an agreement. One of the executive orders was they wanted everybody back in the office, right? On a full-time basis. And so we sat down and bargained an agreement with our management on how to do that. It was going to get us back in the office before the deadline. We really came, not to try to, appease them, but to, show some really good faith there. And we did, frankly. And the Department of Defense denied that agreement. They said that because of the executive order, we couldn't have collective bargaining agreements anymore. We couldn't reach a collective bargaining agreement. We disagree with that, and I think we're going to get into what we did about it here in a minute. But that's an example, right? That generally speaking, it sounded like most folks in the Army Corps were still receiving official time to represent employees. The management was generally respecting people's wine garden rights. So if we don't have recognition, then we don't get wine garden rights under the way that the federal sector law is written. And so, even though that came originally out of a Supreme Court case, the law that applies it to federal workers is, only limited to those with recognition. So right now in the Army Corps, we're still having the benefits of that. Most of our shops are still participating in grievances. Although I will say, I don't believe that any shops are participating in arbitration right now. There might have been one exception where I think even as late as August, one of the locals said that they were participating in arbitration. But I think maybe that had already started. Right now, our expectation in our local is that if we filed for arbitration, we expect the management would either refuse to participate at all, or they would try to make the argument that the executive order means that the arbitrator doesn't have authority to hear the case. So generally speaking, that's where we're at. We're in this limbo. It's really, I think part of the reason the Army Corps is willing to be there is because it's a different kind of destabilization, right? I mean,
right.
In EPA or FEMA or the Veterans Administration, where they've terminated the contracts, or the Coast Guard, they at least know where they stand and they know what tools they have to work with. Us being in limbo like this, we file a grievance under the negotiated grievance procedure. If they terminate the contract, then we no longer can follow that grievance procedure. But now let's take the case of an employee who started, a grievance under the negotiated grievance procedure, had it terminated. Now they go to file under the administrative grievance procedure or under the EEO process or something like that. What are they going to be told? They're going to be told that they're too late, that they had, 15 days or 45 days or whatever to file that alternate thing. Or they may even be told that, generally speaking, in the federal sector, once you choose, a lot of times you got 2 or 3 different options of ways you can go. And once you choose one, you're locked into it. So they're going to, even though you can't follow up here, I guarantee you they're going to argue that you already made your choice. You got to live with it. And so, we've got people that are questioning whether we're able to, what does the contract mean right now because of all this kind of uncertainty. And so I don't know that I would argue that the way the Corps is handling things right now is better than the way the other agencies are handling it, in general, but it's different, and we're making the most of it.
And so I didn't realize that there were 5 different unions that represented folks at the Corps of Engineers, and I'll just get on my bailiwick and also say that this is not endorsed by Colin Smalley necessarily, but I'm always frustrated at how many unions represent workers at a single employer, and I've always thought that there needs to be a huge international rationalization of the labor movement. We got to get all of the unions, we got to get them in a room, and we got to say, okay, look, how many members do all of us have? Where is everybody at? And, AFGE, IFPTE, NTEU, we got to say, there's a way to get everybody basically to the same numbers that they have, but have all of the Corps of Engineers employees in one union, all of the VA employees in another union, all of the NASA employees in another union. And
can I hear my crazy idea here?
All right, do it. Go ahead.
Here we go. So, I think one model we could use, the metal trades councils in the AFL-CIO, I think are an example of something that might work if we were a little more, open-minded here. This might be an opportunity. So for those of you who aren't aware, I know at one of my sister locals at the Naval Shipyard in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, they're part of the Metal Trades Council with a number of other, the ironworkers, steelworkers, a number of other locals or different unions, and they bargain together. So the members are members of their individual unions, but then the unions are members of a council that bargains with the Department of the Navy. So they pool their bargaining power, even though they keep their separate membership among the different unions and different locals representing the different trades or what have you. And so I think that, in the AFL-CIO, there are a number of departments. It's not just metal trades. I know your union and my union are members of the professional department, professional employees department. So could there be professional employees council for the Army Corps of Engineers, where all the different Army Corps locals retain their own membership, but then bargain on a national level through a council? We could be creative on things like that, but I'm completely with you that right now we're splintered. And on one hand, it gives us a certain flexibility. I think part of the reason the Army Corps hasn't taken a shot at us yet in terms of terminating contracts is because in the VA, you could terminate 3 or 4 contracts and cover everybody. In the Army Corps, just in the Army Corps, you'd have to terminate, 30 some contracts. Well, spread that across the whole Department of Defense, it's thousands.
Right.
So, I think to some extent being diversified can have some strategic benefits, but I'm generally with you. I'm a lumper rather than a splitter. I'd rather have us all combine our power. And I think I mentioned, my locals looking into some mergers and things like that. So I'm with you on that. But I think you're right. I think the moment calls for some amount of consolidation of our collective bargaining and collective action power. And I think the more that we're talking across lines, I'm active in the Federal Unionist Network. This is a group that, is explicitly across all agency lines, all union lines. We don't care, all the quasi-governmental corporations, the post office, the TVA. We've got our door open to everybody, and we're trying to supplement all the great work that's going on in the international unions and the local unions around the country, but also just get people talking to each other. And we've seen, in my opinion, tremendous, leaps forward by international unions that competed with each other in the past, or maybe have, kind of kept things to themselves or try to keep a competitive advantage amongst themselves in the past. We've seen them collaborating in ways that, may have existed before, but weren't quite as strong. I think whether it's lawsuits, whether it's bargaining, whether it's congressional advocacy, all the unions are bringing all their resources together right now in this moment. And it's really good to see. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean,
Yeah, speaking of your joint council proposals, Maxwell in the chat says postal unions used to engage in joint bargaining, so there's definitely a precedent in the federal government, and so maybe you and I can submit competing resolutions at the next AFL-CIO International Convention. I can go and argue for rationalization, and you can argue for joint councils, and we can see who wins.
I love it. Yeah, whoever's out there listening, appoint me as a delegate to the next AFL Constitution Convention, and I'll be there.
There you go. So, you talked about how, you mentioned that we're going to be talking about what's been one of the things that's been going on at your local with the FLRA. Before we get into that, I wanted to just have you outline for the audience what typically happens. If you had a dispute with your Corps of Engineers office last year of the same nature, you would have gone to the Federal Labor Relations Authority. How would that have gone? What does that process look like under normal circumstances?
There are four main categories of things that the FLRA does that the unions are involved in. One of them is if you go to arbitration and you disagree with the arbitrator, you can file an exception, basically appeal it to the FLRA. Another is what they call representation. So if you are organizing your workplace, you want to have an election, you've gathered the cards, the signatures of an appropriate number of your coworkers. The FLRA is the one that handles those. They also handle, things like mergers, things like, if somebody thinks that the union doesn't actually represent the employees anymore, they handle those kinds of deals. So representation is the second one. The third one is bargaining disputes. There's in the federal sector, we have in some ways a wider scope of bargaining than the private sector in terms of bargaining over all changes in working conditions. But in some cases, there's some harsher limits. We can't bargain over pay or benefits, that kind of thing. And so a lot of times we'll get into a disagreement with management and we can take that to the FLRA as well. So that's bargaining. So that's the third category. And the fourth is going to come to me here in a minute. But the point is, unfair labor practices, there you go. So if we think that the management, or if management thinks the union is violating the federal sector labor law, we can file an unfair labor practice charge against the other party. If an employee thinks that their union isn't representing them fairly, they can file an unfair labor charge against the union. If the union thinks management's being unfair, we can file against management. So that's the fourth category, is unfair labor practice charges. So in those four categories, generally speaking, there is some role at the regional level. So the FLRA maintains regional offices around the country. Until extremely recently, there's been 5 of them. In relatively recent history, in the last decade, there may have been as many as 8. So there's these regional offices that have attorneys and other staff that look into, they investigate what the issue is. A lot of times that's enough to resolve the problem. Management or the union will kind of dig into their position. Neither one wants to concede to the other that they're wrong, or that they agree with the way the other parties put it forward. But when you get the FLRA attorney in the room, a lot of times, once they get all the facts straight, and they talk to everybody, it becomes clear what the resolution ought to be, and it can be settled. So a lot of times it can be resolved before it even, you even get a decision at the regional office level. For unfair labor practice charges, for bargaining, certain bargaining disputes, and certainly for representation, those were all handled there at the regional level with people that are in our own time zone. Generally, they know us and our management better because we work with them more frequently. Worst case scenario, we could, if it ever came to a hearing or counting ballots and that kind of thing, we could do it face to face. Here for us in Chicago, we had a Chicago regional office here in Chicago that we could directly interface with if we needed to. So all of these things, if for some reason it couldn't be resolved at the regional office level, the regional director would make a decision. If that decision wasn't satisfactory to one of the parties, it could be appealed to the actual FLRA, which has a national office, but they also have members. It's supposed to be 3 individuals appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and from different political parties. So there's supposed to be this body that ultimately holds the final decision authority for what the FLRA does. And then most of the things that they rule on can be appealed once you have a final decision of the FLRA to the federal courts, but not until then. You have to work within the Federal Labor Relations Authority processes and get a final ruling from the national authority itself before you can go to court. That's the way it's supposed to work.
And so what's happening now?
So what we're seeing now, there's kind of two main fronts. One is that with the executive orders that purport to make whole agencies not subject to the federal labor law, we are seeing the FLRA sometimes at the urging of the agency and sometimes on their own doing, I'm going to say blocking. That's what they call it in the unfair labor practice context. They say they're going to block the ULP. And so instead of investigating, instead of having those FLRA lawyers at the regional office look into it and find out the facts, they just send a letter as soon as you file it, and it says, we're blocking this case because of the executive order. We're waiting for the litigation to play out. So they don't even look into it. So like I said, we're losing a valuable opportunity there because a lot of times the investigation itself is what led to a resolution, right? It wasn't, most cases don't go all the way to the authority. And so by them blocking it right there up front, we're really struggling. But we're seeing them block this. They may use other terms for it, but we're seeing them block every kind of case. So there's I mentioned we're organizing in Sacramento district, but a sister local in IFPTE is organizing in the Portland district of the Army Corps. And they collected enough signatures. The employees express interest in a union, and they were entitled to an election, assuming that, the signatures are all in order. So they filed those signatures with the FLRA office in San Francisco, and that is being blocked. They're not getting a vote. Their democratic will of the workers is being blocked by the FLRA because this executive order might apply to them. Right? It's wild. I mentioned the agreement that we reached with our management on to achieve, by the way, one of the administration's objectives, blocked by the Department of Defense. Normally, the way that works is when they block something that's already been agreed to, that's supposed to be expedited. In the law, it says that this is supposed to get an expedited resolution, faster than normal, from the FLRA authority itself. That's in the law. Mm-hmm. And yet, the FLRA, after asking me to write why they should hear the case, which I did, I wrote 8 pages of legal arguments on why they should hear the case, they just paused it. They said, we're going to put it in abeyance, and that's it. We filed a response to that saying why we didn't think that was the right choice. They didn't even respond. So we're getting complete abdication of their duties. They have taken their responsibilities and completely ignored them at this point. And at this point, you only have 2 out of 3 members sitting on the authority. So I understand, we don't have a general counsel. We haven't had a general counsel in the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which is an appointed position since 2017. There's reasons for that. It's ridiculous. But what that means is unfair labor practices, the way they get from the regional office to the authority is through the Office of General Counsel. So since 2017, they haven't been making it there.
Right.
We're coming up on a decade of this kind of complete abandonment of federal workers by the Federal Labor Relations Authority.
Right. And so your local is continuing to act like a union, even in light of attempts by Trump to take away your union rights, in light of, the sort of lack of presence of the FLRA. How are you doing that, and where can people learn more about acting like a union without formal recognition or without maybe support from some of the more official channels?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that there's a lot of great. Let me start with who else is doing some great thinking on this. In addition to the unions, I mentioned the Federal Unionist Network earlier. I'm also an organizer with the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, EWOC, and I can't say enough good things about EWOC as well. They're also doing some fantastic thinking about this. It has a bunch of names. Sometimes you'll hear it called pre-majority unionism. One thing that some friends and I were thinking about the other day, kind of just informal unionism, right? This idea that our power, the source of our power at its root, the reason that we got an FLRA in the first place is because of collective action. It's workers coming together and talking to each other, figuring out what their priorities are, and standing together to make it happen. And so that creativity, that's the source. The FLRA and all of the structure of the Civil Service Reform Act in 1978 that we talked about last month, that all came from a desire, like I said earlier this afternoon, that our desire was between management and the unions to create a process that was easier to follow, easier to understand, all of that, than what was already there. All that stuff that was already there is still there. So like I said, we can still file a case with the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, or Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. So an example of that, my local right now is supporting me being a personal representative, not in my union capacity, but the union is supporting me by providing some resources to help me, learn and do some of the volunteer parts of that job, to represent somebody who's not in our bargaining unit, who doesn't have a union that can file a grievance and go through the negotiated grievance and arbitration process. We're taking that case. It's potentially going to go to a hearing next month in front of a judge. And so, we're using that to show how quickly we can pivot to a different process. We stood up for a fellow union member of our local who had deployed overseas to a different part of the Army Corps of Engineers, but he wasn't technically covered by our contract. But we still filed a grievance on his behalf when he got an unfair evaluation in his annual performance review. And that had an effect on the bottom line of his annual performance bonus. And so we won that. We got that money back in his pocket. And so, the thing is, we're turning to all these things. An example of, just from this week, yesterday, I delivered a petition signed by 50 of my, fellow union members that here in Chicago, the president's ordered a number of, an extra number of federal law enforcement agents from ICE and other groups to try to disrupt, to make chaos and try to, goad the people of Chicago into rioting and that kind of thing. They're trying to start something here. And so, I mean, even today, if I were to go downtown, leave my house, go downtown in Chicago, I would get carded to see if I have, either a place of business downtown or a dwelling downtown before they would even let me into the downtown of my own city. They've threatened to bring in the National Guard, things like that. So what my fellow coworkers did is we signed a petition. It's up there live right now. More people can sign if they want. We've done our initial delivery, but we didn't close the signatures, to say that we should be allowed to telework during this violence that the Homeland Security Department is trying to visit upon the people of Chicago. And so, so far we haven't had a response. Like I said, we delivered it at the end of the day, Friday, but we'll see what happens on Monday. We also called for our boss to educate people that they have a right to protest. They have First Amendment rights, even as federal employees. The Hatch Act is often given to federal employees as an example of things they can't do. But I don't think a lot of people know that the Hatch Act has a list of things you can do. It is also a protection for federal workers. And so I want my boss to remind workers of that. And then, they can give the examples of things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't be going out there. Like you said at the beginning here, I'm not speaking in my capacity as a federal employee. I'm not speaking in my capacity as an employee of the Chicago District or the Army or the Department of Defense or War or whatever they're called. But so as long as I don't keep those logos on, as long as I'm clear in what capacity I'm speaking, as long as I have a sense of, putting up those appropriate boundaries. I'm not honking for a picket line while I'm driving a government vehicle. There's things that make sense, right? But in our personal capacity, we have First Amendment rights, just like any other employee, just like any other American. And so we want management to remind people of that. So that's something we did. But a petition, that's nothing in my CBA talks about that. Nothing about, my collective bargaining rights talks about our ability to file a petition to talk to our boss, who happens to be a public official. So, those are all examples. Like I said, I've got a blog post up on the EWOC website that has a number of my ideas on kind of, creative ways the unions can still represent people. But I also want to be really clear that the bottom line is the basis of our power is organizing. It's one-to-one conversations, workers talking to other workers, learning what's going on, when they've been wronged, and taking a stand together to put those things back right.
Federalunionists.net is the Federal Unionist Network's website. Y'all are having some trainings on this kind of stuff soon, right?
We are. So we did one on Thursday night, this last Thursday night, but we've turned this into an every 2-week session. So every 2 weeks, we are getting online. It's at 7 o'clock Central on every other Thursday night. So not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday after next. You can sign up. I don't know if it's on the federalunionist.net website, but if not, if you sign up, you'll get added to the Slack. And I know we've got it there. I can get the production folks here at TVLR the link as well to sign up for that, to register. So no, that'd be great. We'd love to hear y'all. I was talking at the one on Thursday. We heard some great things from a bunch of great unions around the country. We're going to try to bring in more people from different unions, different both rank and file members, but also experts at our union staff. People ask, why should I pay union dues? One reason is because we have access to experts on the staffs of these national unions, whether they're lawyers, economists, lobbyists, just some fantastic bench of expertise that we have direct access to. So we're working to bring those, get that in front of everybody. That's part of why we still need to be members, even when the boss tries to tell us we don't have a union anymore. They're wrong. Federal unions are still unions, and I'm proud to be a member of one. And I'm so glad you all had me on today.
Federalunionists.net is where you can go for that and fill out their form to join the Federal Unionists Network, and then you'll get notifications about, about stuff like the trainings that Colin was talking about. We've been talking to Colin Smalley, president of the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 777 in Chicago, Illinois, representing people at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers there. Colin, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it.
We got a bunch more stuff to get to, folks. Let's do this really quick, and then we'll take a look at we're going to react to a bunch of clips from the congressional hearing. The machinists at Boeing in Missouri have been on strike for almost a month. I mean, gosh, a month on the picket line really is a long time. And obviously wishing them all the best. They got a tentative agreement last week, which was interesting because prior to that, the company had said, we're going to start hiring permanent replacements. And so it was very funny. I mean, it was like just a day or two removed from each other that those things happened. So very funny to see Boeing so quickly back down from trying to hire permanent replacements to then offering a tentative agreement to the workers. In the interim there, Josh Hawley also commented on the situation, saying that Boeing needs to suck it up, that's his quote, and give the workers what they are asking for, basically. There's an article in Missouri Net. Senator Hawley stands by St. Louis Boeing workers on strike. Management needs to suck it up. Let's see if there's any other. He said, I think what needs to happen at the end of the day is management needs to come to the table and do right by their workers, said Hawley. I mean, listen, the CEOs of Boeing have made unbelievable sums of money while their planes have been falling out of the sky, literally. So, I mean, that's true. I mean, these people have strip mined that company, Hawley told Missouri Net. The C-suite is doing great over at Boeing. Their workers are the ones who've been getting the shaft. The problem is the workers are the ones who make the planes. So if you want anything to work, it's got to be the good people who are on the line, the engineers and the designers. They're the ones who Boeing needs to do right by, and they haven't. Management here needs to suck it up and get this thing over with. That company is so important to our state, the jobs it provides, the great things it produces. Missouri Net also has quotes from Tom Bowling, the District 837 president, saying the members have the final say in what they accept or reject, and they responded loud and clear with their overwhelming vote. Our members at Boeing are standing together for more than just minor adjustments. They want fair pay increases, faster wage progression, and an increased ratification bonus. They're fighting for work-life balance. So they, as that quote indicated, the members did reject a tentative agreement last week. It was by almost 60%, something like that. The offer that was on the table previously that was rejected was a 4-year contract. It was offered at the end of July, average 40% wage growth over 4 years, and basically the only change to the contract was that they added a 5th year with also a 4% raise. So the raises for the first contract that was 4 years was 8%, 4%, 4%, 4%. And so then the strike settlement offer in September was 45% cumulative wage growth, with the general wage increases on an annual basis being 8%, and then 4 years of 4% raises. And so they just tacked on another year. That was basically the biggest change. And Boeing came out with a statement after workers rejected the agreement, saying that they have made clear, quote unquote, we have made clear that we are not going to be moving substantially on the general economic package. We're willing to make adjustments, as the union thinks is valuable, but they've said we are not increasing the package. And now they've gone back to, we're going to start hiring permanent replacements again. But like I said, the strikers have told news outlets and have, tweeted things on Twitter saying that they're not really concerned about that because, there's nobody inside the plant to train the scabs. So hopefully they're right about that, and the plan to hire permanent scabs fails. All support to the workers over there in Missouri who are working for Boeing. And, folks, if you're listening to us and you're on strike over at Boeing, give us a call. Let us know what's going on. Let us know what it's like on the picket line, 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. You can call while we are live on Saturday mornings. Every Saturday morning we're live. You can call in, or you can leave us a voicemail at any time, and we'll try to play it on the next program. But we love to... we love to highlight strikes and stuff like that, and contract negotiations, and let folks tell people what they're going through. Things like this are really, really important. The New York Times says that the strike is the first at the St. Louis plant since a nearly 100-day walkout in 1996. That is as old as me, folks. So that's how long they've gone without a strike in St. Louis there. So yeah, hope y'all are doing well on the picket line. Hope you're still in the more fun phase of the strike. I know that a month in, you're starting to get tired. So that makes it all the more impressive that workers still voted down a contract that didn't meet their needs. So obviously, all support in the world to them. And give us a call if you're out on the picket line, 844-899-TVLR. Okay. So there was a hearing last week, a congressional hearing by the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. For those of you who do not know, that is when Democrats take office, they call it the House Committee on Education and Labor. And every time Republicans take office, they rename it to the House Committee on Education and the Workforce because, they see labor as a word that is dirty. And so they try to cancel us. And that's what they were trying to do in this hearing last week. The title of the hearing was Unmasking Union Anti-Semitism. Oh boy. Now, I did want to pull this. I wanted to pull a quote from somewhere near the middle of the, hearing that was really interesting. Because, they were just, we're not attacking unions. We love unions. It's just this certain behavior's really bad. Let's play clip 2.
We're not attacking unions. We're attacking abusive union leadership that are not doing what they're supposed to do for their union membership. I thank unions for the working conditions I had at U.S. Steel, Southworks, because of what my dad as a union organizer and others did. We're talking about the backing away of protecting union workers. We're not attacking unions here. And I think that's why the Republican Party is now being seen as the party of the working man and woman, the rank and file. Randy Weingarten has not said anything about anti-Semitism. So to raise her name raises my ire.
Just lots of things there. Just want to point, the overall point of that clip was to show you that, they're saying we don't hate unions generally. We're just saying that they're doing this one bad thing and they should stop doing that bad thing. Now, I also want to comment because he talked about how Randy Weingarten was raised by one of the pro-union people in the hearing to talk about how she is a Jewish union leader. And then he says that, she's not talked about anti-Semitism at all, hasn't said a thing about it. And, you can just literally Google Randy Weingarten anti-Semitism, and there are like a whole page of things about Randy Weingarten talking about anti-Semitism. Just literally Google Randy Weingarten anti-Semitism, and you'll see a bunch of stuff there. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous lie. Lying on the House floor, whatever you call it. Just absolutely ridiculous. And so now I want to juxtapose this statement from this Republican. We're not attacking unions. We just think that this particular behavior is bad and they should stop. I'm going to play you a couple of clips for the recommendations from some of the anti-union people about what should be done about this quote-unquote anti-Semitism crisis. And you kind of evaluate whether or not this is just bog standard anti-union policies, or if it's specifically tailored at changing behavior within the labor movement. Let's play clip 3 this is from one of the witnesses who wants to freeload at Cornell. He's a grad student at Cornell, wants to get all the benefits of his union without having to pay his dues. Let's play clip 3.
I'm a registered Democrat. Protecting students from anti-Semitism and forced association should not be a partisan issue. It is wrong to make support of any ideological organization a condition of earning a PhD. As the steward of taxpayer dollars, Congress should hold Cornell accountable to its obligations under the Civil Rights Act. When Cornell allows CGSU and UE to create a hostile environment, it must face consequences. Finally, Congress should clarify that PhD students are students, not workers subject to forced dues. This was settled law until 2016, when the National Labor Relations Board erroneously classified us as employees. Congress should promptly fill vacancies on the NLRB so this can be rectified. By ensuring degree seekers are rightly defined as students, Congress can end the intimidation and harassment I and others have experienced from CGSU and UE. And the payment of union dues should be strictly voluntary.
So just in case you couldn't kind of parse through the way that he phrased that. His solutions are national right to work. His solutions are ending all grad student unions, eliminating the right of grad workers in this country to unionize, totally eliminating an entire section of the labor movement. Not anti-union. Give me an effing break. Say it with your chest, right? I got my feelings hurt about some of the things that some of my coworkers said, and now I want to take away their rights. You know, okay, then we can debate the merits of that. But coming at this with like all this mealy mouth BS, oh, I'm not anti-union. I just got, it's so freaking ridiculous. And then he also said, I can't remember if it was in this clip, but he said something about a bare majority at Cornell voted in the union. And so I was like, a bare majority? That doesn't sound right, because almost all of these grad student unions have been voted in by overwhelming margins. So it seems like I would remember if there was a grad student union that was, just a super close election. The election results was 1,873 in favor of unionizing to 80.
I guess we know one of the 80.
So that sounds like a little bit more than a bare majority to me. Here's another one of the witnesses from the Republicans, a guy who literally works for the National Right to Work Foundation. Again, Republicans telling us this hearing is not anti-union, it's just anti-Semitism. We just don't like anti-Semitism. We love unions, don't like anti-Semitism. Let's take a look at what his solutions are for this quote-unquote problem. Play clip 4.
So what are the solutions? First, Congress should pass the National Right to Work Act to end the problem of coercive forced unionism. Second, Congress should enact legislation redefining graduate students as students, not employees, as they were for the first 60 years. And third, Congress should strengthen Title VII to better protect employees of faith from unions' anti-Semitism and radical ideologies. These would be small steps to restore individual employees' right to not be part of a forced collective that takes hateful pro-Hamas views on foreign events 5,000 miles away from the workplace. What could be more American than that?
Okay, so there you go. Anti-Semitism in the unions, pass national right to work. Doesn't seem like a very tailored policy. Does not seem like a very tailored policy. And so, okay, well,
Jacob, hold on.
Yeah.
Hear him out. If the problem is the unions are being anti-Semitic, what if you just didn't have unions anymore?
True! Then we wouldn't have anti-Semitic unions. We just don't have the unions anymore, and the problem is solved. And that's why this whole BS about it's just so freaking frustrating. And so, okay. We've kind of framed the hearing for you. The Republicans are saying not anti-union, anti-Semitism. That's the thing. Despite the fact that all of the proposals to address this issue are literally the same exact proposals that these freaks have been pushing for 100 years. Okay, that's the framing. So let's actually take a look at this anti-Semitism. What are some of the problems that these people are allegedly having? And fortunately for us, Representative Randy Fine asked the question that I would want to ask, just to have this, just to have it on the table. He says, what is the worst thing? Give me the worst thing that's happened to you anti-Semitically. What is the worst anti-Semitic thing that you have experienced from your union? And so, when I heard him ask that, I'm like, okay, here we go. And because, look, I'm a person of the left. I'm a person that is pro-Palestine. And I think if you live in reality, you would recognize that there are anti-Semites on the left. There are people who say anti-Semitic things on the left, and, to a certain extent, they have been emboldened over the last several years. And so, look, I was expecting something like real here, right? Because even if there was something real there, that doesn't mean that we should support national right to work, but that does mean maybe there should be, within that union, maybe there should be some conversations about, certain things. And so Anyway, I'm kind of as I'm listening to this, I listened to this hearing 2 whole times, whole thing through twice. The first time I heard it, I'm like, okay, well, here we go. Here's the. I'm gonna have to like sit with this and kind of meditate on, what is the solution to real anti-Semitism from a fellow union member, and so I'm gonna listen to this instance of anti-Semitism, and I'm gonna think about what is actually the right way to address this. Okay, so I've set up the clip for a while. Let's play clip 5, where Representative Randy Fain asks one of the witnesses to give us the worst thing that's happened to her.
Ms. Mann, you testified about how the union contributed to the culture in your workplace. Could you tell us, the best is not the right word, the worst examples in the communication of anti-Semitic tropes or conspiracy theories in the multitude of things that you've gone through?
I would say that the posters that said "From the river to the sea" were definitely the worst of what I saw.
I mean, come on. Let's just play that again. Give me the worst anti-Semitic thing that you've experienced. You've traveled. You're from New York. You've traveled all the way from New York to Washington, D.C. to tell the American people about all the problems that you're having with anti-Semitism in your union. You've traveled hours, spent hundreds of dollars at least to get there, and you're putting this into the congressional record. And you get the opportunity to say, what's the worst thing, the thing that like keeps you up at night? Let's play clip 5 again.
Ms. Mann, you testified about how the union contributed to the culture in your workplace. Could you tell us, the best is not the right word, the worst examples in the communication of anti-Semitic tropes or conspiracy theories in the multitude of things that you've gone through?
I would say that the posters that said "From the river to the sea" were definitely the worst of what I saw.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The idea that that's the worst thing that happened to you is ridiculous. And there's just really not much else to say about that. And, and look. It's not to say that there's maybe not some people, who are in Palestine, in Hamas, that say that and have negative intentions. I'm sure that must be the case. That must be the case that there are some people in the U.S. that say it with negative intentions. But the idea that is one of the leading chants of Palestinian liberation. And I can even grant that maybe it makes some people uncomfortable because they've always associated it with the people that have negative intentions. I can even grant that and say that, that your feelings are as feelings, they are valid. And, that maybe it warrants a conversation with your coworker to get there try to understand better what the message that they're trying to say. But the idea, this is the worst thing that's happened to you. Just come on.
Well, I gotta say, my friend texted me this week, and she was going to get coffee here in Alabama, and happened to walk by a stop sign and noticed Patriot Front stickers on the stop sign here in Alabama. And I don't know. It's just baffling if that's the worst thing that's ever happened that the unions have done, is they put some posters with some words on it that you don't like, but that clearly contain no slurs or anything of that nature. I don't know. It seems like the unions aren't doing so bad on this issue.
Yeah.
If that's the most damning evidence you have. Because, there are millions of union members who are as diverse as the working class, and you're going to find some union members with bad opinions, right? That's a fact. And you're even going to find some probably with hateful beliefs. And that's really unfortunate. But yeah, that is a doozy.
That's a doozy.
That's a doozy. Like if that's the most damning evidence you have found, because the really sad thing about this is that there is real anti-Semitism, just like there's real racism and all kinds of bigotry. And when you cheapen it and use it to score political points like this, it really diminishes people who have had real experiences. And it diminishes real hatred and bigotry that is out there. And I do think it actually it causes backlash, and I think it probably makes it more likely that there will be anti-Semitism when you falsely accuse people of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is really unfortunate. I mean, and I know that this labor movement is not perfect and it never has been, but historically and today, our labor movement has always fought for human rights. And we have fallen short at times, but by and large, we have been a force for good, a force for equity, for inclusion, for bringing all kinds of people in together. And that's what I tell people, that unions are for workers. Doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love, where you're born. If you're a worker, then unions are for you. And that is the overwhelming consensus in our unions, I do believe. And so it's not disappointing, because I would assume I had higher expectations. But wow, yeah, more power to you for entertaining this and like listening to the whole thing. It's really tragic in a way, because you think about all the other issues that Congress could be dealing with right now. Some of these same politicians are the same people who cut health care, who cut food stamps, who cut Medicaid. We're going to be dealing with the consequences of their actions for years. Everyday working people are going to suffer, and this is what they're wasting their time on.
Yeah, and let's talk just a little bit about Representative Randy Fain. In July of 2025, amid increasing warnings about famine in Gaza, Fain tweeted to starve away. That is a quote from him. Regarding innocent Palestinians, he tweeted, quote, "Innocent Palestinian civilians took a baby and a little boy hostage. They strangled them a month later and then mutilated their bodies to hide it. There are demons that live on earth. They deserve no state. They only deserve death."
Wow.
And this is
wow.
The subject is quote innocent Palestinian civilians. Later on, they deserve no state. They only deserve death.
So this is a man who calls for ethnic cleansing.
I mean, literally.
Who has the gall to say that unions are a problem because they put up posters.
Fain arranged for regards from Randy Fain to be written on an artillery shell to be fired on Gaza, and later arranged for messages on 2 more shells.
What a sadistic person.
Yeah. I mean,
that is sadistic.
Yeah, no, wicked, demonic, etc.
Wow.
And so that same, and again, just to reemphasize, just to dig in the point that this is not about anti-Semitism. One of the witnesses basically tells unions to shut up and dribble. Let's play clip 6.
I believe that unions should stick to negotiating wages, health care, employment conditions. The union should not have a political view that's unrelated to its members' well-being in the workplace. Just because unions were once politically active historically does not mean they need to be now. Times change. We shouldn't have to vote about political resolutions on anything about foreign policy that has nothing to do with representing individuals in New York City.
And, look, make the case. Put forward a resolution prohibiting, political involvement in your union and see if your coworkers agree to it. But
that's right.
Unions are democratic.
Process.
Yes, unions are democratic institutions, and they represent the whole worker. They are the workers' representatives in public life. And if workers want their voices as a working class to be heard on any issue, then the union is where to do it. And if you don't want your union involved in that, then make the case for it. And, maybe you can win. And there are some unions that do that, and there are some unions that do have stronger prohibitions against engaging in politics, quote unquote. And so I mean, that's fine. You can do that, but that's yet to say that, to kind of implicitly advocate that government stop unions from doing that.
Right. I don't like the opinions of my coworkers, and I cannot out-organize them, so I'm going to ask war criminals sitting in Congress to come in and swoop in and ban them. What the hell?
Yeah. And so Joseph McCartin was the witness for the Democrats, and so he makes the case for unions having a place in the political life of their members. Let's play clip 7.
Unions from their formation in the United States have realized that they have to take political stands to effectively defend and advance the interests of their members. That was true in the 1820s when the first unions helped to launch their own political parties, working men's parties. That was true in the early 20th century when Samuel Gompers drafted Labor's Bill of Grievances, because the courts were attacking workers' rights to strike effectively, to organize, and they knew they had to get political to fight back against that. That was true in the 1960s when the labor movement supported the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act, because they understood that what could be won at the bargaining table could be undermined by politics if workers didn't have a democratic voice there. That has been the labor movement's history. That is its stand even today.
Yes. And if I could ask you another question very quickly. Historically, how has social inequality coincided with the strength or lack thereof of labor unions?
Social inequality has been in inverse proportion to union strength. When union strength is strong, social inequality is weak. When union strength weakens, social inequality grows. That was true in the 1920s when the labor movement hit one of its low points, inequality surged. After World War II, when the labor movement was strong, inequality dropped. Economists talk about the period of the Great Compression, because the poorest 20% of Americans saw their income rise most then. When unions weakened in the 20th and early 21st century, however, we've seen inequality surge. Perhaps members here know of the recent study by the Rand Corporation, which documented that if we had merely retained the distribution of income we had in 1973 to the present day, the lowest 90% of Americans would have earned $79 trillion more than they ended up earning. That's because of union weakness.
And if I could conclude, I just want to say that this is obviously not about protecting workers. It's been about silencing dissent, criminalizing free speech, and chipping away at the foundation of our democracy in order to accelerate a shift toward authoritarianism. Unions are the first line of protection against that, and we have to speak out against these attempts to suppress these unions. Thank you, and I yield back.
Joseph McCartin continues and elaborates on why fighting for national right to work is not going to address even the degree to which anti-Semitism is a problem among some union members. Fighting for right to work nationally is not going to address that. Let's play clip 8.
Fighting for a National Right to Work Act, as Mr. Taubman is calling for, is not going to solve the problem of anti-Semitism or improve the bargaining power of workers. It's really a non sequitur when it comes to the question that we're considering here today as well. That is, do unions promote anti-Semitism? Union members have rights. There's been lots of talk that union members or unions are not properly defending their members, representing them today. I would assert that they represent their members as well as anybody on this panel represents your constituents. That doesn't mean that your constituents agree with everything you do. They don't. That doesn't make your positions any less legitimate. That's what unions are about, representing people, and they might not do it to the satisfaction of every member.
Amen.
And that's exactly right. I mean, there's really not much else to say about that. And it's just, he also points out how the right to work guy has been literally fighting unions for 43 years. and he says the right to work guy, in his opening statement, he talks about how this isn't your grandfather's unions. And McCartan's like, well, this guy, the guy literally sitting next to me, he hated your grandfather's unions, and he was fighting against your grandfather's unions, So, like, screw this guy, basically. He didn't say the last thing, but
right.
It's just so frustrating.
It's just now this is a new topic that they can dig in on.
Let's round out with, we're going to skip clip 9, and then we're going to come back to it. I want to play clip 10 because, the Cornell Union is a local of UE, and so UE in particular was being smeared all throughout the hearing, and McCartan responded to some of the slander, frankly, against UE. Let's play clip 10.
It's been a lot of energy talking about the United Electrical Workers here today. Mr. Rubenstein, Mr. Taubman, together had 255 pages of testimony about the UE. Not once in those 255 pages did the name Carl Rosen appear. Who is Carl Rosen? He's the son of a Jewish worker. He leads that union now, and he's being attacked here as a supporter of Hamas. I would urge anybody in this committee to go to the website of the United Electrical Workers and see if they endorse and embrace Hamas. Since Samuel Gomper's time, and you will find that they don't, since Samuel Gomper's time, this is the kind of attack labor has faced. Mr. Taubman has told you, for 43 years he's fought unions. He says, these unions are not your father's labor unions. He didn't like our father's labor unions either. He was fighting them 43 years ago. Then he might not have been talking about anti-Semitism, now he is. At the very moment that he's bringing these cases forward, he's also bringing another case forward at Cornell of a student who's not alleging anti-Semitism at all, but just does not believe that they should be in a graduate student union. Mr. Taubman at one point said that Samuel Gomper said unions ought to be voluntary. Samuel Gomper might have, if you pull that out of context somewhere, said something like that, but he fought his whole life for the idea of a union shop being a very American thing. That was what he was dedicated to. And so to portray him in this way, to caricature him, and to caricature so many of the people we've heard caricatured here, it breaks faith with that image you're talking about, Congressman, of Gomper's enlightening Roosevelt. We need a little bit more of that kind of enlightenment, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. So the last thing that I wanted to do...
That was a very gentle professor kind of way of owning him.
Yeah, that's a great idea for the title. Labor historian totally owns national right to work freak. I'll end on this clip 9 because they talk about quote unquote funding agendas and stuff, and I have some things to respond to with respect to who's funding whose agendas. Let's play clip 9.
I'll begin with the principle that I think everyone should agree with. No employee should be required as a condition of their employment to financially support a political agenda or a candidate that he or she opposes.
Now, this is just a real sort of ridiculous thing if you know anything about the way that the American economy works, or any economy, frankly, because the reality is that workers create all of the profits that a company has, and workers have no say over how that profit is spent, including the extent to which profits are spent on political campaigns. Corporate donation in political campaigns far outweigh union donations. Workers get a say over union donations to candidates. We do not get a say over corporate donations to candidates. Do Home Depot customers get a say when Home Depot writes big checks to Donald Trump? Do Home Depot workers get a say when Home Depot writes big checks to Donald Trump? No, they don't. Workers in unions do when unions write checks to political candidates. And further, the only times that unions donate to political candidates are through PACs, which are separate, voluntary contributions from members. They do not come from dues money. It is illegal to spend dues money on political campaigns. Very frustrating. So, if you appreciate that I sat through that hearing twice, you can make a donation, tvlr.fm/donates for my sacrifice to help me sit through the next one. There was a video that I watched that was a lot easier to listen to, and, frankly, I had a really hard time clipping this one because there was just so much that was good, so much that was really good in it. We're going to go a little bit long, maybe 10, 15 more minutes, but I really wanted to share this with you because it is so good. And I really recommend folks just check it out. Go and watch the video. Go on the YouTube, UAW's YouTube page and watch their most recent town hall. It was so good. There's so much in there. The headline is... The real big headline is Shawn Fain previewing some of their demands for the Big Three 2028 contract negotiations. Let's play clip 11.
I remember during the Big Three stand-up strike, the corporate media said we were going to wreck the economy. And I remember telling them, we're not going to wreck the economy, we're going to wreck their economy. The economy that works for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. An economy that leaves workers without living wages, without adequate health care, without retirement security, and without time for our family and our friends. Take a look at this slide. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the billionaire economy. As you can see, between 2015 and 2025, the Big Three made over $200 billion in profits. And you know what they did with those profits? They showered them on the rich shareholders and the corporate executives. Over that same last decade, the Big Three have used $110 billion of those profits for stock buybacks and dividends. Who does that benefit? And why do we accept this as a society? And let's be clear about this. It isn't just the Big Three. It's the same story at General Electric, at Lockheed Martin, Caterpillar, John Deere, Daimler Truck, Case New Holland, Cleveland Cliffs, Dana, Lear. In fact, our union represents workers at 26 publicly traded companies across 5 sectors. And since 2015, UAW members at those companies have produced $566 billion in profits. And those same 26 companies have distributed $530 billion in stock buybacks and dividends. That's over $500 billion. That's how much it costs to build our country's entire interstate highway system in today's dollars. And remember, 93% of all shares are owned by the top 10% of the wealthiest families in the United States. The majority of Americans have no investments or very few investments in the stock market. UAW members at these 26 companies, which represent auto, ag imp, aerospace, defense, and IPS, produced $566 billion in profits, and 94% of those profits 94% of those profits were used for stock buybacks and dividends so the rich can get richer. That is outrageous. That is the economy we need to break. And we have a plan to break it, and that plan is May Day 2028. And let me be crystal clear on this. On May Day 2028, the UAW will not settle for anything less than retiree health care and a real pension.
There we go. That's a pretty big pretty big thing to lay down, and so we'll obviously keep an eye on that. But that'll be a big, big demand: retiree health care and a real pension for all Big Three workers at the UAW. He did speak on some broader topics, obviously. Here he talked about what he sees as the defining moment of our generation, generally speaking. Let's play clip 12.
I want to start with one image, one that I believe is the most important chart in America in 2025. It's a simple chart, but it tells the whole story about everything that's wrong with our country and our economy. On one line, you'll see productivity. Since 1948, American workers have been producing more and more value. Our productivity is through the roof. An average full-time worker today is creating 250% more value for their employers than a worker did in 1948. We work harder, we work smarter, and we generate more wealth than any generation of workers in U.S. history. On another line, you see wages. And for a while, wages kept up with productivity. Unions had the power to make sure that when workers produced more, they also got paid more. And that's how it should be. That's how a fair economy should work. But starting around 1980, that line broke. Productivity kept climbing and wages flatlined. And on the third line, as you can see, as productivity climbed and wages flatlined, union membership began to crash. 1 in 3 workers belonged to a union in the late 1950s. Today, only about 1 in 10 workers are in a union. When corporations went on the attack, union membership went down, and wages went down with it. But that productivity line kept going up. So where did all those productivity gains, all that value that we created with our hands and our minds, where did it go? The working class didn't see rising productivity get rewarded with more money in our pockets. Instead, those profits went to the top, to the billionaire class, to the people who never stepped foot on a factory floor but think they own everything that we build. We live in a country where the richest 1% of humanity now owns more wealth than the bottom 95% of the world's population combined. Where the wealthiest 10% of Americans own 93% of all stocks. And where the average retirement savings for the bottom half of Americans is zero. Zero. That's why this fight, our fight for retirement security, is so critical. That's why the battles we've waged over the last 2 years matter so much. And that's why May Day 2028 will be the defining moment of our generation.
I agree. So really looking forward to seeing what happens in 2028. The last clip that I wanted to share with you from the town hall, and again, I really recommend, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you're going to want to watch the whole thing. But he talked a little bit about how the UAW under his leadership is thinking about engaging in politics and like what it means to engage in politics as a union, why you do it, and what some of those, what that would look like to, what it looks like to do that. So let's play clip 13.
The billionaire class is on one side, the working class is on the other. And the fight ahead is about who will control the wealth that we create and the society that we live in. And make no mistake, the billionaire class is not going to give up power willingly. They are on an endless pursuit of profit, no matter the cost. They will try to divide us with tiers. They'll try to divide us by race, by gender, by who we love, by who we worship, by what language we speak, or what bathroom we use. Anything to keep us from uniting in a common cause as a working class. And when that's not enough, they'll use their power in government to lock in an undemocratic system that keeps working people on the sidelines. But where corporations seek to produce profit, our movements must produce leaders, not just in the shop, not just in a union hall, but in society. That's why our fight is bigger than wages. It's bigger than benefits. It's about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and what we're going to do to change it. So what's that mean in practice? It means we have to continue to organize the unorganized. Millions of workers wanted to join a union, and we have to bring them into our movement. It means we must rebuild our own union strength from the shop floor up. Every work site needs strong leaders who can stand up to the company at a moment's notice, whether it's to enforce the contract or win a better one. It means we have to rebuild our power to strike. It means we must revive the strike, not just as a weapon to win better contracts, but as a school for class struggle. When workers strike, we learn how much power we really have. Some of our members want us to stop being political. But if we're going to win things as big as pensions or post-retirement health care, we can't ignore politics. The answer is not to become an appendage of one political party, but to build an independent working class force. Our politics as a union should be rooted in bold, ambitious demands. Our four core things: wages, health care, retirement security, controlling our time. And we should hold every politician accountable to those things. And it means we have to elect more of our own. Not millionaires who've never worried about paying a bill, not corporate stooges. We need to elect working class people who know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And it means we have to deepen our ties into our communities. Because our fight is not just in the shop. It's in the neighborhoods we live in, the schools our kids attend, the hospitals we depend on, and the planet that we all share. That's the work ahead of us. That's the road to May Day 2028. When I ran for this office, I said we need to put humanity first. And I said we need to get back to the basics, back to the issues that matter most to working people having a dignified life. So the question for us is, what unites us as a working class? In my walk, I've found that there's four core issues that every working class person agrees on and is ready to stand up for, from the workplace to the ballot box. And those four core issues are simple: wages, health care, retirement, and time. The first one of those is wages. And the point of that is this: no matter what work you do, no matter what job you have, no matter where it is, you should earn enough to live a decent quality of life. A wage that lets you pay the bills, support a family, and have dignity. And the second thing of those four things is health care. We live in the richest nation in the history of the world, yet we rank dead last among rich industrial nations when it comes to meeting the health needs of our people. Health care should not be tied to whether your boss is feeling generous. In the richest country in the history of the world, no one should have to choose between seeing a doctor and feeding their family. No one should have to go into debt to pay their medical bills. Our healthcare system robs workers of dignity and weakens our power at the bargaining table. Healthcare should be a human right for every worker. The third thing is retirement security. Our country right now is in a retirement insecurity crisis. Last year alone, we hit what we call peak 65. More Americans turned age 65 this year than at any time in our nation's history. And the bottom 50% of Americans have no retirement savings. That is a crisis. After a lifetime of work, you shouldn't have to retire into poverty. You shouldn't have to retire into fear. You should retire with dignity, with health care, and with a pension that allows you to live. And the last of these four things is our time, getting our time back. You know, our time is our most valuable commodity on earth. Our lives aren't meant to be consumed by work. And as we talk, technology is advancing faster than ever. You know, Walter Reuther once had a famous saying talking about technology: we must master technology, not let it master us. Technology could be used to shorten the work week, to guarantee jobs for everyone, to help us live more fulfilling lives and more productive lives. If advances in technology are only going to make billionaires richer while everything gets worse for the working class, then we have failed. That's why we have to fight for shorter work weeks, for the same or more pay, for more time with our families, for balance in our lives, for contract language we can enforce that protects our bodies, our families, our lives off the job. So wages, health care, retirement, security, and time, those are the foundation of living a dignified life. And it matters to every working class person, union or not.
One of the best communicators on class politics, I think, of our era. Really fantastic. And like I said, I mean, obviously, I played a lot of that town hall, like 30% of it, and I could have played more very easily. So, you know, check it out if you haven't seen the whole thing. Adam, I don't know if you had any reflections on any of the stuff that he talked about.
Well, something I really appreciated was just laying out the big picture and laying out how we as a working class have been getting our ass kicked for decades now. And the decline of union power is absolutely, like, that's it. Like, we are weaker as a labor movement, and as a result, the rich get richer, and things keep getting worse for us as working people. And so that is a crisis that we have to address. And I appreciated that he also emphasized the need for leadership and for folks to step up from the workplace into the community to the ballot box and beyond. I mean, it's going to take a lot of everyday people stepping up. It's going to take mass engagement. You know, unions were strong. We were at a time where we had 1 in 3 U.S. workers, 1 in 4 Alabama workers. But that took a lot of people power. That took a lot of mass engagement. It took a lot of everyday people stepping up and getting involved in their own way, whatever that looked like. Everyone's different. Everyone has different talents and skills to contribute, you know, but we need more people doing the work. Those of us who are doing the work, we've got to find more folks to help us. We've got to do a better job of that, of recruiting new leaders, of building up young leaders, getting more people engaged. The polls are overwhelming. The vast majority of workers are with us, right? We've got to give them the tools, and we've got to develop them as leaders to step out, to organize. And we in labor have to step out of our silos and make sure that we are organizing with community and in our communities, and we are building power collectively across the working class, and not it's easy to get wrapped up in our own contracts and our own struggles and lose sight of that big picture that we as working people are falling behind. We keep falling behind. And you know, the way things are going in this country and in this world is getting worse and worse and worse, between the destruction of our planet, the inequality of wealth, just the entire state apparatus being directed against us as working people. So, you know, the solution is organizing, and the solution is massive people power, getting folks engaged in a way we haven't seen in generations, since, you know, the 60s and 70s, since the 30s, since we saw those mass waves of organizing. And, you know, were there limits to that success? Absolutely. You know, obviously they didn't solve all the problems back then, or we wouldn't be here where we're at today. But there was tremendous gains that were made by everyday rank and file working people, who were willing to take risk, who were willing to trust each other, build relationships, and you know, build collective action, and build collective power by doing that. So, yeah, I appreciate those words, and you know, I think the 4 pillars of dignity that they described is something that can easily resonate with a lot of folks. Time is definitely something that we hear about a lot, There are so many workers who are dealing with forced overtime, so many workers working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, so many workers without paid leave of any kind. You know, we talk a lot in the South and in Alabama about family values. And damn near every politician in office, you know, will brag about their family values and how pro-family they are. And yet their own constituents can't even spend time with their families, hardly see their families because they're working, you know, 55, 60, 70 hours a week. It's crazy, you know. The politicians and the business owners, they'll be watching football this weekend, right? They'll be at home with their families, eating good food, watching the game. But a whole lot of the workers will not be. They'll be at work against their own wishes. And folks shouldn't have to work that much of their life just to make ends meet. And it's time that we reclaim our time as workers and as human beings, frankly. You know, we came close to a 30-hour work week back in the 30s, and I'm glad to see conversations reviving around that because, you know, those are the sort of ideas we need to be talking about, and I think that will resonate with working people. And the last thing I'll say is we absolutely do need more working class folks stepping up and running for office. You know, there's debates about electoralism and how effective it is and all that, but as long as we have these offices, I would much prefer working class people be contesting for them, because it's disappointing when you look around and you recognize that everyone who represents you, quote unquote, in power in the state is of another class. You know, we're the majority. Working class people, we are the majority, but you wouldn't know that from looking at our representation. And at the very least, we deserve more representation. And I think that's really a good starting point, is at the very least, we deserve what we're owed, which is equal representation. And if we're the freaking majority, it's time for our society to start to look like that.
That's going to be it for us this week, folks. Appreciate y'all tuning in. You've been listening to the Valley Labor Report. You can give us a donation, tvlr.fm/donate. Subscribe to our newsletters at tvlr.fm. And we'll see you next week.